introduce everybody. I'll introduce everybody and kind of give some light banter. That's the center camera.
The center camera. There are 4 cameras. So,
Vince, that's the center.
The lower center one.
And then this one's y'all two, right there. See right on the screen.
Okay.
That one's y'all right here. And
Okay.
then the far one is on.
I have no idea what I'm looking at, but it's fine.
Let's see.
I figured it out.
April, the one by the TV is the one straight at you.
Right. Okay. Because you looking at it and I can see you looking straight. Okay.
Oh, so I need to look at that camera then, not that one.
Yeah. And then this one's just the wide.
Okay, that's the
Got
one.
it.
One's the wide.
Okay.
I see it.
Y'all two, you and Chad will look at that's
the tall one.
if y'all want
The tall one.
Yeah,
Okay.
exactly.
That's the tall. Okay, we got you.
Awesome. Make sure y'all can't see that little safety pin. Okay.
And I am recording, so y'all can start with me.
Okay.
Awesome. Grace and peace, you guys. This is April Chapman, and I'm with Unshakable with April Chapman. And listen, when I tell you this is like a dream come true, okay? I am sitting here with some of my peers, but also mentors in a sense. I am sitting here with the academic of the group. We've got Chad Jackson in the house. We also have Vince Everett Ellison and Chuck Littleton. And we are live in Lynchburg, Virginia at Media Squatch Studios for it. Would you guys call this an in-house friendly moderated discussion?
Yes.
Of course, yes.
That's what it is.
Yeah, we're all on the same side.
Yeah, we're all on the same side.
We're all on the same side.
We're all on the same side.
So I'm calling this group an unlikely, they're a bunch of misfits, y'all. They're misfits in the sense that none of these guys really have a whole lot in common, but they have such amazing qualities that overlap that causes me to admire them all in their own right. So I guess the first thing we'll do, we're absolutely, you guys, going to talk a lot about the civil rights movement. That is a source of contention right now within these conservative circles because individuals are questioning whether or not the civil rights movement was valid, if it helped move the conversation forward, if it helped improve Black people in any way. We're also going to talk a little bit about this contention that you two kind of have. It's friendly fire with the differences between the Republican Party and the Democrat Party, and how, Chad, you're just like, whatever. I don't care for either one of them. And whereas you, Vince, you have more of a more nuance.
No, I don't have a nuance.
Okay.
It's a visceral hatred
I think Chad probably the one that has
for Democrats and anybody that has any affiliation with them.
Okay, so you have an intense hatred for the left, but not as much for the right.
Why could you like somebody that want to castrate little children? Want to cut off the breasts of little girls and call them little boy?
Fair point.
Want to abort children up to the 9th month?
That is true.
Want to pull God out the public square, have drag queens shaking their asses in your children's faces in public education. No, I got no love for them.
Right.
And every time I see one, I want to knock them out. And if it was legal, I'd do it.
I get you. Well, for the watching audience, this is a cognac and cigar roundtable. And I wanted to make sure y'all understood because the cognac is in the center and we do have the cigar smoke is plentiful. So if I start choking, because I'm about to start gagging in a minute, that is the reason why. But I will suffer through it for the sake of this discussion. So first.
And you look good in that red pantsuit.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much.
That's stating the obvious.
Oh, well.
Do you agree?
Yeah.
Chuck?
Yeah, I
concur.
There you go. We just want to just give you your props.
Thank you. Well,
red pants,
listen.
red on the bottom. You know what I'm saying?
I'm trying to match you.
Hey, listen.
Y'all, Chuck got on a suit. That was a request. I said I cannot do the show
put a suit on today
unless Chuck show up in a suit.
And every outfit I wear, I gotta wear some type of headwear. So I mean, I didn't have to wear a hat, but I chose to. So
Well, you look amazing. All of you women and gentlemen.
Great looking young man. I applaud you.
Thank you.
Well, you the old head of the group.
I am. But again, Chad and Chuck, they really give me hope because again, when I see these young men up pushing the generation and getting young people to have to answer hard questions, they're not asking questions. They are providing information. They have the answers. And then they go out there and say, prove me wrong. And now people are having to bow to them. We are making serious inroads, not because people listen to old guys like me. They're listening to young men like these guys. And they walk out there and they do battle. And when they do battle, they don't lose.
Awesome. Well, let's start with this. Chad, I want you to talk to us or amongst us and the listening audience. What is this animus that you have with the civil rights movement? As you know, your film, MLK Motives Unmasked, talks a lot or has some overlap with the inroads that the civil rights movement was making. Lay out your best argument as to why you do not believe the civil rights movement was beneficial for America.
Well, you kind of put me on the spot here, especially when you said lay out your best argument. It's typically when I'm asked to lay out my best argument that I lay out my worst argument. So
well do your best. Well, you got backup here.
Okay, yeah, definitely, for sure. And giving credit where credit is due. I mean, Vince did a film called Will You Go to Hell For Me that covers a lot of the same material.
Right.
But the civil rights movement was an absolute detriment to America. It's interesting because when you look at the I Have a Dream speech, which every child who goes to an American public school, and even many private schools for that matter, are taught about the virtues of the civil rights movement and about how great of a leader King was and how that I Have a Dream speech was quintessentially American, when in reality, it was anything but American. It was antithetical to America and downright hostile to not only America, but Western civilization in general.
In what ways? Because that's a blanket loaded statement, but to the uninitiated ear, that's blasphemous for you to say that. We hear that speech and we're like, how can you say such a thing?
Yeah. Well, you're wrong.
Oh, okay.
They don't hear the speech. They think they hear the speech. But they don't actually hear the speech. If you actually listen to the speech, you'll hear exactly what I'm talking about. And I challenge every person listening to this podcast to actually go back and listen to the speech and really listen to what is being said.
Right.
Vince covers this at length on his own show, as well as speeches that he gives around the country. But if you listen to the speech and he's talking about there will be neither rest nor tranquility until the Negro get his due justice. That the whirlwinds of revolt will continue to rock the core of this nation until the Negro gets his justice. Well, who defines what that justice looks like, actually? Whenever King was asked on a number of occasions after that speech, what does equality for the Negro look like? He talked about redistribution of wealth. He talked about a guaranteed income for the Negro and all poor people. He talked about things that are quintessentially communistic in nature. That is what he said will bring justice to the Negro. He said the work is never done. And then after he passes, all of his successors are continuing on saying that we have not arrived. Obama said we have not arrived. All those who even came after Obama's presidency said we have not arrived. Right. Nobody knows the answer of when that justice is going to finally roll down like water.
Like he said.
And it's not meant to be final. It's not meant to have an end date or a desired goal.
Open-ended. Yeah.
It's open-ended and it's meant to exist in perpetuity. That's what that speech represents. And perhaps we'll get more into a lot of the goals that undergirded the March on Washington, but I'll just name one right now. What the March on Washington was, it came to fruition in 1963, but they've been attempting to do it since the early 40s. And there were other similar quote unquote marches on Washington in the 1930s. And if
with similar demands or?
Well, so when you look at the, I forget what the actual name of the march was. It was, you had veterans in the 1930s who were upset that they weren't getting what was promised to them for going into the war.
These were World War I veterans, right?
Yeah, the bonus marches.
Yeah.
And if you look at a lot of the speeches that were given during the bonus march and you listen to the I Have a Dream speech, King is actually lifting some of the rhetoric from those speeches. He's lifting rhetoric from other speeches that were given by other orators and things that were written by other writers. For example, there's a Chicago man by the name of Archibald Carey Jr., who in the 1952, I believe it was, Republican National Convention, delivered a speech, and perhaps we'll get into the speech later on whenever we're talking more about partisan history. But he delivered a speech. He's a black man out of Chicago, delivered a speech to the Republican National Convention. And he's talking about this scenic kind of vision that he has of letting freedom ring from this place to that place, from that place to this place. And
so it wasn't original.
It wasn't.
King was a hell of a plagiarizer.
King was a plagiarizer.
That we do know.
Yeah.
Do you share the same sentiment, Chuck? I've followed your work for a good little while, and you have a very eloquent way of putting things as well. Do you share the same sentiment on the "I Have a Dream" speech, and is it from the same vantage point?
Absolutely. As Chad, I am in agreement with Chad. The unfortunate part about it is that, most people honestly, I believe that most Americans, generally speaking, they haven't heard the speech. They've never listened to it. They know that, of course, the famous line about content of character.
Right.
Yeah, that's the line.
He takes that line, and all throughout the speech, as Chad has just pointed out, he says a lot of things that are overtly communist, that are overtly Marxist, and he sort of he blends those two things together so as to say, if you're talking about content of character, if you want to in fact prove that you believe this, then now it's time to give blacks their quote unquote fair share of the economic pie, so to speak.
So what is your push? What would you say to individuals? Because I understand both sides of the argument, and I land on your side. Trust me, I do. But it is so difficult for people who they don't understand the argument, and their position is, well, but black people were not equal. We didn't have what everybody else had, and we couldn't achieve what everybody else could achieve. How can you say, right? So but you have to flesh that out for people, because they struggle to think that sitting beside the white man or drinking from his water fountain was the pinnacle of our achievement.
I was about to say, you pointed at him and said white man. He's the darkest one.
I'm looking like...
I know, right? No, you know what I'm saying, though.
Yeah.
Help them to understand it.
This how do you define success, and how do you define making it? Like we mentioned earlier, we talked about the open-ended fallacy.
Right.
Thomas Sowell talks about that in one of his books. He's written so many, and may have been the famous economist to whom many people still make reference to, Adam Smith, who originally coined the term of the open-ended fallacy. It's like, well, you make a proposition, but, given the fact that, our resources are finite, right? There has to be a limit. It has to be a line that you cannot cross so as to potentially destroy the entire thing, because no one ideal is worth destroying everything until you achieve this goal. For example, such things we talk about economic justice, right? One of the terms that King would throw around. Well, what is that?
What is that?
What makes you equal? What is the dollar amount that we need to attain that says we're now equal?
What makes you go, okay, I can't afford to pay that. I can't pay the cost. The price of that is too high.
Right. Because
the only thing, we can hope to do as human beings is mitigate certain unwanted things, is the burden of life, right? The burden, to live is to be burdened, and there's only so much we can do to alleviate the things that we find displeasing: war, poverty, conflict, these sort of things. And so when you hear King say what he says during the March on Washington, and he goes on to say as well, I don't believe it's the famous "I Have a Dream" speech, but he did say, and he's probably said it on more than one occasion. I know this is a famous quote of King's where he talks about how the the black race or the black man or whatever, there can be no justice or equality for them until they receive economic justice or economic equality.
Does he ever define that?
He never defines it. And the thing is, it's like you said, what exactly makes a person in their mind believe that all groups are for no reason other than the fact that they're alive, I
should
guess.
Have the same everything.
Yeah, that they should have the same everything. Where does this notion, whether
it's envy, it's covetousness.
I was going to ask,
what they did also, they defined it in a kind of weird, finite way of telling black people with a slave mentality that this success comes when you have access to white people.
Right.
Whenever you want it, in any way that you desire it. And they have no right to ever tell you, I don't want you in my presence.
Right. Like,
and if they do, they are bad people.
It's funny that you bring that up because it's almost as if there's a person, you're trying to set a boundary. You're like, I don't want to have anything to do with you. I don't like you. I don't want you in my personal space. And this person just insists, why don't you pay attention to me? Why don't you love me? Why won't you let me be in your life? Because I don't want to.
And colored people weren't exactly chopping at the bit to get into white spaces.
They weren't. You're right. They were not. That was the fallacy. You had a bunch of people bust down from the North mostly,
right,
who wanted to press this ideology. And they said that, they bought this false dichotomy that unless you are allowed in white spaces, you are inferior. And that some law has been broken and that you've been treated badly. And black people are the only people, I studied this, and maybe the South Africans might be next to us, only people in the history of the world that ever fought to integrate with their oppressor.
Yeah.
Never. Everybody else, even the Indians on the Indian tribes, didn't want to be around white people because they were fighting to be away from them, actually.
Right.
You had the Asians would come over, they'd start Chinatown, Koreatown. You have the Irish, they would start their time. People will come together because it was understood. And we see it in the animal kingdom. They come together in herds for protection.
Right.
We're going to come together. It's not that we hate you, but we kind of know.
We know us.
We know us, and we're going to come together, and we're going to cook our food, listen to our music. We have a type of comfort with each other because we know each other.
A clan type bond.
And nobody ever saw injury in that. It was always something that people did. And when King went into Chicago, for instance, you had sections of Chicago where the Jewish people lived, where the Irish lived, where the Italians lived, where the whites lived. And then you had the black section. Yeah. And the black section wanted to forcibly come out and invade these other sections.
They didn't tolerate it.
And they're saying,
get out of here.
Why?
You talking about the Marquette riots and stuff.
Yeah, you remember Forrest Gump when it was on Forrest Gump and they showed that Miss Malone was trying to integrate University of Alabama. Forrest comes in. Forrest is very simple, as you know.
Yeah.
And, he was retarded, wasn't he?
He's in that car.
Forrest walks up.
For the life of me, so many people love that movie, and I still don't know what it's about.
But listen, though.
I don't know.
Listen, though. Forrest walks up.
But what is it about?
But
What's
listen,
the
let me tell you this.
Movie? I don't know.
Let me tell you something about it. Forrest walks up, sees all of this stuff happening. He sees George Wallace keeping Vivian Malone from coming in. And so Forrest says, well, what's going on?
He's P. Diddy all in the video.
Yeah. He says, what's going on? And then this guy says, Coon's trying to get into our school.
Coons.
Forrest said, Coons? He said, well, Coon's trying to get him. Mama just knocked him off the back porch. He said, no, not Coons. N-word. And then Forrest asked the greatest question ever. He said, you want to go to school with us? He said, yeah. He said, why?
Right. And most of us took that the wrong way.
Yeah. Forrest says, why?
Right. Right.
Why?
Right. Why
and
do you want to go?
That's always the question, isn't it? Why?
I just had a revelation. I think I may have discovered what the movie is about.
Common sense. Why? Don't you have your own schools?
So smart.
Why would you want to be around this chaos? Why would you want to integrate with the Ku Klux Klan?
Right.
Right.
Why do
demand
you want
that they educate you too?
Right. What did you say? Only a fool want their enemy to educate their children?
Yeah.
And nevertheless, we were forcibly sending our children to places. Vivian Malone, Ruby Bridges.
Oh, we love that story, don't we?
Where they treated that child like a dog.
And imagine
James
the parents
Meredith,
subjecting their children to that.
Yeah.
No, we've been told that is virtuous, that you're doing a good thing for the Negro race, Ruby, by going into the school where these people can spit on you. Now, I understand the argument that it was wrong for these people to spit on her. That's not the argument.
Why would you put your child through that?
That is my argument.
Why I don't want my children going to school with you. And there were good Christian white people and Christian black people that would come together. And then those were the ones on the other side, the Klan and the Nation of Islam, they didn't want to come together.
But even the Klan was infiltrated by the communists.
Of course they were.
Well, let me just say, I mean, people organize themselves in ways in which they see fit.
Right.
And a lot of the people who were opposed to, who thought that the Supreme Court had, made the incorrect decision in the Brown case. A lot of people were saying, you just wait and see. Eventually, they're going to start forcing integration. They're going to start busing them. And people, no, that's never going to happen.
Wow. And so it was their sentiment. You're saying
it wasn't a foregone conclusion.
It wasn't. And then what ended up happening was once that decision came down, the demographics, I mean, they remained virtually unchanged. And then people said, okay, well, since you don't want to do it, we're going to make you.
We're going to force you.
We're going to force you to do it. Now, I think it was the Kent County case.
And then the 1964 Civil Rights Act, when they were discussing it, they said on the floor there would never be busing. They would never ever allow busing in the United States of America, forced integration. And then guess what happened? The federal courts.
Court of Courts came in and busted.
But what do y'all say to people who say y'all sound racist? Y'all sound like y'all want us in a segregated schools and segregated, whites only businesses.
You don't talk to people like that. You talk past people like that.
We got to dumb it down for the.
I don't. I don't think it's my obligation to dumb it down. I mean, when you look at the growth of my audience, it hasn't come by dumbing things down.
It hasn't.
It's come by speaking the straight facts and telling the truth.
And my answer is always, why would you want to be around someone that doesn't want to be around you? Why would you want to be somewhere where you're not wanted?
Right.
Why would you want to be somewhere where the people make you feel small?
Right.
Why would you want to go somewhere where you're merely being tolerated? That's manhood 101. If you go somewhere and you know you're not wanted, what do you do, Chad?
You go someplace else.
You go somewhere else. You just leave.
You just leave.
Peace out. I'm going to make you serve me. I'm going to go and I'm going to call the police. I don't want to be here.
Sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead, Chad. No.
And it really, I mean, it's so telling because it reveals what's really at play here. This is about your worldview in terms of what you think, or what institution, if you would, you think is most vital to the functioning of a healthy society.
Right. That it has to be that.
Yeah, because the reality is you're still dealing with people. So if you think that a person is incapable of opening up and softening their heart so as to go beyond the boundaries of their own familiarity in terms of their plan with race, religion, and so on and so forth, you're saying that the private sector is incapable. And so therefore, we're going to leave it up to legislatures and those who execute the law in the executive branch to make sure we accomplish what is socially ideal. But these are still human beings. So here's the question. If you don't think that white people are capable of being fair in the private sector, why are they going to be fair in government? It's just that you believe that the most capable and the most ethical and moral people are the ones who are in government because you place impetus, you put primacy on the state as opposed to the original idea. We're talking about Western civilization. I think when it comes to Christianity, it crystallized it. But even prior to going all the way back to the days of Aristotle, when he talked about how individuals protect themselves from tyranny, is they must cultivate virtue.
Right.
So you must have an internal sort of governing mechanism. This is what we're talking about when we mean self-governance.
Right.
Based on virtues and
principles. Based on morality.
Sex and appetite.
Exactly. You remember that's what John Adams said? This Constitution is designed for moral and religious people. It's wholly inadequate for the other.
Yeah.
Because we give so many freedoms to the people of America that if you are not moral, you're not virtuous, you're not good people. And also, if you're not moral and virtuous, who are you going to elect?
Right.
Look in the ghettos. Who do they elect?
Black Democrats.
Despots.
People just like them.
Just like them.
Black Democrats.
Because they have no virtue.
Let me say something real quick, because pardon my insensitivity earlier when I say you just talk past them.
Right.
I think Vince hit something basically right on the head when he, basically it's exposing the insecurity that people have
inferiority.
When they say, well, what about, what about this and what about that? It's like, why do you feel that you need proximity to white people in order to feel as if you are equal.
Right.
That says more about you.
Because his water is colder, Chad.
Right. White ice is colder. And so that's what they're subconsciously demonstrating.
Right.
Whenever they say, well, what about race? They didn't want us in here. They didn't want us. Well, listen.
I couldn't buy a house in that neighborhood.
For every whites only sign, you had a colored only sign.
Yes,
You did.
Correct.
Think about that for a second.
You had a colored water.
A colors only water fountain, right? So the discrimination went both ways, right? So the fact that you see a whites only sign and you feel some type of way about that says more about you.
Or why is it white people never felt some sort of kind of way to be like, well, why we can't go eat with the coloreds?
Right.
Because minorities. I mean, they had their sensibilities exploited by demagogues, or perhaps they had their sensibilities shaped.
Can you dumb that down? What?
When it
no. They were taught by the iron triangle to feel inferior.
Yeah.
Our leadership never taught us to look at ourselves the way we were supposed to.
Yeah. Is that what you were saying?
Yeah, like Booker T. Washington and George Schuyler and others.
And then what? And they got excoriated by the NAACP and W.B. Du Bois.
Yeah, and it's fairly easy to use minority populations for this purpose, particularly politicians, those who specialize in the soft sciences and in the humanities. Unfortunately, our humanities has been completely just degraded, and so that's probably a whole other discussion. But considering the fact that blacks are the racial minority in this country, and we have a totally different. I mean, our histories are intertwined with different types of white folks from various parts of the European subcontinent, right?
Right.
But human capital does not develop in a vacuum. And what I mean is that, certain individuals or certain groups of folks just have a tendency. It doesn't mean that they're locked in there. But certain groups of people have a tendency to be good at certain things.
Right.
And it doesn't mean that if you take an interest in that thing, once we can kind of lift the restraints on people and kind of allow them to explore, to see exactly what they want to do or what they're good at doing, and so on and so forth. It's not like you can't be good at this thing over here, but certain gifts, certain skills, certain human capital, as we call it, it tends to remain within certain groups,
right?
And when you have black folks and we come over here and we're the racial minority, again, it's automatic. It's easy to say, well, you don't have what these folks have over here. It's like, well, again, why do you expect me to have that necessarily? I mean, why?
Who set the standard that was?
It's like the world's best. I don't know, a hockey players, they aren't going to come from hot weather climates. It's just not, because the human capital needed, the environment that is needed is not present in those particular areas. So they tropical weather climates aren't going to produce, let's just say, great hockey players. That's just the reality. But I think I want to piggyback on something Chad said when he talked about getting, I guess, entry into white spaces. This is King before this whole thing, this talk in modern day, as far as like our politics, the back and forth that we have about, say, for example, like critical race theory and these things. Famous scholar, you may have heard of him, James Lindsay, wrote the book Race Marxism. Before anyone was even talking about critical race theory, I mean, King was a proponent of critical race theory or race
James
Marxism.
Baldwin.
James Baldwin.
So it's been around for a while.
You go back to Du Bois, it goes back to Marcus
And they always
Garvey.
paraded them and made them the leaders of the black community.
Why do we need leaders?
They choose our leaders.
Yeah, and so
White liberals.
I brought up James Lindsay just as a point, because when James Lindsay, for example, when he talks about understanding what Marxism is and where to spot it, he poses the question. He says that you have to always ask yourself, what is the thing that is being owned? Because race Marxists, just like Marx, when Marx talked about capital. He viewed capital as a certain type of property.
Right.
So when these folks talk about quote unquote whiteness today, whiteness exists as a kind of capital, as a kind of property. And seeing as how, if economics, if you want to look at it, I mean, from vulgar Marxism, we'll look at it from, like they say, orthodox Marxism, or what he wrote about, what he talked about, because Marx famously or infamously, depending on your perspective, he ignored race and sex and all these things, and he began to, latch all these other things on to Karl Marx's ideas and perspectives. They would say, well, your economic lot is determined by the color of your skin. Oh. And so therefore, if you're allowed to be amongst whites, if you're allowed to be in their spaces and allowed to be in their institutions, that gives you access to the kind of
gonna rub
capital.
off on you?
All of that was an absolute lie.
It's just going to rub off.
Because in laissez-faire economics, best service, best product, best price. You will get the money because most people are going to make sure their dollar can stretch because it's in their best interest. What did Adam Smith say in The Wealth of Nations? The economic works best and everybody goes out for their own best interest. And when you look at your dollar, you're going to say, am I getting the best service, best product, best price? If you can give it, most people do not care about your color. They're going to buy it. That's why when you went to Harlem, the cotton clubs, even when it comes down, and it's terrible to say this, but even when it comes down to the dope game, the junkies know where the best stuff is.
They know it. That good crack.
They know it.
That good crack.
And that's where their money's going to go.
I just want to say something real quick about, Vince earlier mentioned the northern students being bussed down, the college students being bussed down to the South.
Right, to agitate.
And I want to talk about that in conjunction with another thing that we were talking about earlier, namely the fact that the so-called leaders, the appointed leaders, were instilling grievance and bitterness into the minds of colored people. They're about the middle of the century. It's interesting that it worked better in the North than it did in the South.
Why do you think it did?
Well, in the South, first of all, and I'm sure we'll get into this later, the South has long been caricatured by Northern propaganda. And when it comes to the Black boule or the Black bourgeoisie or the talented 10th types, the civil rights activists and ideologues, they have caricatured the Black Southern working man as being docile, as being slave-minded. That
is true. I'm from the North, so I can speak to that. That is true.
But like for me, I'm a Southern man. I'm born and raised in Texas. My dad is born and raised on a ranch in rural Arkansas. Okay, we go back to Arkansas for generations. My mom, their side comes from Oklahoma. Right. So we're in the South and going out into the West. Now, what's interesting is growing up, and my dad is one of 13 brothers and sisters, and he's among the youngest. They, in rural Arkansas, were going to school with white folks before forced integration, right? So even though in places like Arkansas, you had laws on the books, what you found by and large is that a lot of these, well, maybe not by and large, but what you found, at least in some circumstances, a lot of these laws weren't even being enforced.
Right.
As it pertains to commerce, as it pertains to schooling, so on and so forth. Because it wasn't a lot of this agitation and rabble-rousing that people were succumbing to. The communists were making inroads as early as the 1920s. You can read about this in Robin Kelly's book, Hammer and Hoe.
I have it.
This is a Black man who calls himself a Marxist feminist, right?
So gay sound.
And he's what he's doing in this book is he's documenting communism specifically in the South, in places like Atlanta, Birmingham, and Montgomery, since before King was in diapers. So King would come and be a part of this kind of long-standing communist tradition that precedes him. People think that, well, we'll probably get into that later on, but what you find is that these people were oddballs because Southern colored people were getting along well with Southern white people.
Right.
And that kind of relationship, that kind of understanding and reconciliation was being exploited by the communist faction as to say that, look, to the extent that Negroes are getting along with whites, it's only because those Negroes are Uncle Toms, because they're docile, this, that, and the third. And so they didn't have a whole lot of volunteers, if you will, when it came to the protesting, when it came to marching. That's why they had to bring these people up from the north.
Did you see that movie, The Great Debaters, with Denzel Washington?
Yes.
Do you remember Washington was a communist in the movie?
Yes, there was a lot of anachronisms in that book.
And this was pre-World War II, wasn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and it showed that he was trying to organize the sharecroppers.
He quotes the Willie Lynch letter.
Yeah, exactly.
In that film, which the Willie Lynch letter, I mean, is completely bogus.
Right, but he quotes it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, people loved it.
But there's an argument that people are going to accuse you guys or us of you guys are just romanticizing life in the Jim Crow South. You're trying to imply as if there were no racial tensions down here and that black folks weren't being lynched and hunted down like dogs by the KKK.
We don't have any racial tensions now, so I guess we cured it. Right. No racial tensions in the 21st century.
Right. Well, my argument has always been that obviously there were racial tensions there, but what I've come to learn is that why is it that post-Reconstruction, when you had so many free black men and so many injured white men, how did you allow yourselves to be subjugated again by the Klan when you outnumbered them?
I'm sorry, April, but I'm going to have to actually push back against your premise.
Okay.
I don't concede to that.
What don't you concede to?
I don't concede to this notion. Like, I'm not romanticizing the South by any stretch of the imagination, but what they are saying the South was like is completely just off. It's just off. The white folks weren't checking for black folks like that. They weren't going around looking for a Negro to
just hunting them down every night.
That they did put in their Southern constitutions that black people couldn't vote in Democratic Party primaries.
I mean,
they were completely segregated.
If we're talking about politics and voting and the quest for power, like that's an animal in itself.
Right.
But when it comes to social life, it wasn't this thing where where colors were just constantly being oppressed by the white man.
But when it came,
that's the story.
But when it did come down to voting and to politics, the oppression would come, and black men wouldn't fight back. I'm not concerned about the oppression. I'm concerned about the cowardice.
That's what I was getting at. And
the fact is that if black men wanted to participate in the American experiment, it was going to take violence, the same way the founding fathers and everybody else did it. They, when it came down to saying, I want to be involved in the political structure, in the political process, they allowed themselves to be cowed. And for a generation, they allowed many of them to be cowed. And when it came down to voting, we can go through Reconstruction and talk about, when they were lynching and killing, and this is where the Mississippi plan and the South Carolina plan came from. They said either buy them, intimidate them, or kill them. And there are many testimonies up in Washington, D.C. when Ulysses S. Grant, who's president, sent down, they did the Ku Klux Klan Act, and they sent the Union forces down here to protect black people because, number one, they wouldn't fight back. They had to send the Union Army down here because they wouldn't fight back. That was always my problem. And the problem with me, as I said again, people do not oppress you because of the color of your skin. They oppress you because you're weak. And if you're strong, individually strong or collectively strong, they don't bother you. They complained about the situation, but the men were not man enough to deal with the situation. So in the election of 1876, when Hayes went against Tilden, Rutherford B. Hayes was a Union general in the Civil War. He got shot 5 times. He was the governor of Ohio. He has a Republican nomination. And South Carolina had 3 times more black men in it than white men. And somehow or another, 101% of the registered voters voted that year, and South Carolina went Democrat, with 3 times more black men in it than white men. Mississippi had 2 times more white men.
How does that math?
Than black men in it than white men, and it did the same thing. But they started the Mississippi plan and the South Carolina plan in like 1875. And it was a definite plan to repress the black vote through intimidation, through violence, or either through buying it. And black men allowed it to happen.
Well, here's the thing. I think there's more nuance to it than that. Because when you look at the Reconstruction era and you look at the carpetbaggers and the scallywags, and how, I mean, you read about
you
how...
may need to define these two groups, the carpetbaggers and the scallywags.
I will, but let me continue my train of thought before I forget.
Sure.
What you have is, and I know what I'm about to say is controversial, but who cares?
That's what this show is.
You have carpetbaggers and scallywags basically encouraging vice within the Negro Southern community. Encouraging vice, encouraging things like bribery and just being, it was just a whole mess. And then by the time you get to the early 20th century and you see communist agitation, again, documented by Robin Kelly, not somebody who's ideologically on our side.
Right.
It's important, especially as a researcher, not to read other conservatives, but to read what they say what they are saying about themselves and about their own history.
Right.
And when you read people like Robin Kelly, and he's talking about how the communists in the South, as early as the late 1910s, early 1920s, are specifically pushing voting and pushing the kind of civil process or the civic
engagement
process, and making that a big issue when you find that blacks were actually voting in those days in the South. Right. The poll tax was not exclusive to Negroes. The poll tax was utilized across the board when it came to voting, when it came to who's competent to vote, so on and so forth. But what the communists were doing was exploiting it, making it exclusively about race, and trying to really brew a lot of friction between Southern Negroes and Southern whites. And so while I take what you're saying, Vince, about the cowardice piece, I think, yes, depending on who we're talking about, that's a component. But also we can't sleep on the fact that this issue was being exploited, exaggerated. It was being embellished to really make people so concerned about the issue that was really a non-issue. Make people so concerned about the issue that they feel inferior, that they feel oppressed and downtrodden and put upon, and so on and so forth. When the reality is,
voting wasn't a non-issue.
When the reality is, many white people weren't even voting in a lot of these Southern contexts. It wasn't just blacks who weren't, like, there were a lot of white folks who weren't even voting.
Correct.
So it's like, and so it wasn't. So for me, I refuse to continue, and I'm not saying you're doing this, Vince. Please don't hear me say this, but I refuse to give these leftist lunatics continual concession and continual ground and saying like, yeah, well, black people were being oppressed and this and that and the third. Like, no, there was a lot that was going on that was purposefully and intentionally meant to brew friction. And it was done not by Southern rednecks, but by these people who were ideologically committed to communism and agitation.
No doubt. But to your point, the fact that black people were not being allowed to vote in a quasi-legal way because there were Southern constitutions that were racially exclusive. Black people are not going to be allowed to vote in these Southern Democratic primaries.
Right to time.
That was a fact. They did in South Carolina, Mississippi, Alabama, and the Republican Party did not exist down South. They didn't allow it. If you were a Republican, they would kill you. They did not even ask the question. It did not exist down South till maybe the 1970s. So when people, even when this comes down to the big switch, actually, and they said that the party switched, I said it couldn't have switched because the Republican Party didn't exist down South for a very, very long time. It was Democrat or nothing else. Every senator, every governor, every congressman from the South was Democrat because the party did not exist. So black people down South were voting. They had one option to vote, and that was a Democratic primary. And usually in the Democratic primaries, they weren't allowed to vote for a very, very long time because they were racially exclusive. So they had no political power. Now, before that time, in Reconstruction, there was a lot of violence. And it was a lot of racial violence because black people, of course, were trying to register to vote. They weren't allowing the old Southerners to vote. They felt, the old Southerners believed that, okay, we've been pardoned. We should have the right to vote. We should have our power back.
You're talking about former Confederates.
Yes.
Okay.
And you have the carpetbaggers and the scallywags that are, in their minds, these are illegal governments. Because a lot of these places down South were not really so much states anymore. They were.
And I believe they were illegal.
They were cut up militarily.
It was virtually martial law.
Yeah, it was martial law. They had the troops down there. And so you had a lot of the Confederates saying, hold it, wait. I thought that we were states again.
Yeah.
We thought we had our rights back.
So your government,
no. But
governments
then,
are no longer functioning. I'm sorry.
Right, exactly. And so then you had Ulysses S. Grant come in and say, no, this is over with. It was about political power. There's no doubt. And another civil war started happening down there. Mm-hmm. And it was against basically the Southern whites and the Republican Party that they believed was down there illegally taking over what they were doing.
So is your position that Black folks shouldn't even have been that concerned or involved in the political process, but rather ignoring what these agitators were saying and just focus on what Booker T. Washington was trying to get them to do? I'll say this real quick
and give it to Chuck, but not by the mechanisms by which they were being pushed and forced by these communistic factions.
Well, let me say this before and then Chuck can take it. But this is where I am with it. I don't care what was going on. If you're free, you make the decision about your life. Yeah. And you be willing to defend it with violence.
Well, real quick, do you believe everybody should have the right to vote?
No, of course not.
Okay, just curious.
No.
Can we qualify that?
Well,
because if you say I can't vote, I won't be offended. I'm just wondering.
You have a certain age to vote.
Right.
Of course.
Well, do you believe everybody?
At that time, women couldn't vote.
Do you believe everybody over the age of 18 should have the right to vote? Who's not incarcerated?
Should.
Over 18? That's too young.
Yeah, way too young.
Right now, it's just the Constitution is what the Constitution says. So I think
but that's not what the Constitution originally said.
No, not originally what it does now. It's just the law. It's a civil right. They can give the right to vote to anyone they want to give it to.
What should qualify a person the right to vote?
Basically, what the population says, what the majority of the people say, because it's not an unalienable right like the right to life, the right to freedom. I mean, the right to freedom. That's an unalienable right given to God. A civil right is a right given to government, and it can be made to be anything. And this is why those civil rights thing to me is a canard, because governments can give rights like right now. The right for men to marry men.
So much I can't remember.
Is a civil right. It can be also taken away. But my unalienable right cannot be taken away. Even our Declaration of Independence says if you try to take it, I have a right to resist with violence.
Yeah.
So when you start talking about the right to vote, it's a civil right. And the government and the majority of the people determine that right, like they did with the 19th Amendment when they gave women the right to vote. Women could not vote. The 13th Amendment when they gave the 15th Amendment when they gave it to men, all men, Black men. Before then, they didn't have it. They can also expand it to 15-year-olds if they want to with a constitutional amendment. So it's a civil right. The people vote on it through the constitutional amendment process. And based upon how the people see it.
Well, there's a dilemma in what you're explaining here insofar that the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendment, because you just qualified your position by saying if this is what the people want. Yeah. And when you look at the circumstances under which those amendments were passed, it was not through the people coming together and figuring this out. It was through nefarious. It was through strongholding.
It's politics.
Yeah, but
it was politics. It's what politics always is. It's land handling. It's swapping. But it was political.
But it wasn't.
Let me let Chuck jump.
It was far deeper than that, though.
But it was also something where Abraham Lincoln basically said, "We fought this war. 600,000 men have died. Mm-hmm. It is wrong for us to tell these Black men who are now citizens who fought for their own freedom, you cannot vote in this country." And so now we have to pass an amendment to give them the right to vote. They fought for their freedom. And it's wrong to tell these people, as Andrea Scott, that you're not citizens. If you're citizens, you have a right to vote, as white men do. So how are you going to square that circle in the United States of America when you've had men that fought for their freedom, where you say that the Fifth Amendment to due process applies to everyone now, and then say, but you can't vote? I
can't see it that way. And
well, you were saying that it's all right for black men to not vote?
Well, I understand your position. I have to be more careful with it. Mm-hmm. Because when you look at the quest for a proletarian revolution, a earlier phase into getting to that ultimate goal is mass enfranchisement. And so while the notion that, we should extend the right to vote to Blacks and to, people who just came across the pond and are being a naturalized citizen and so on and so forth, to the extent that we do that, the politician who advocates for that, though he may seem friendly like a friend instead of a foe, we have to really kind of look at what is the ultimate goal, what is the ultimate purpose of this. And so for me, it's like, I can take what you're saying at face value, but what I'm saying is that we should tread more carefully.
Well, it was a situation where you had to determine something here. Whether or not, after the 13th Amendment, where they were free, the 14th Amendment, where they had due process, then the 15th Amendment comes and says, okay, do they have the right to vote? Can these men who have fought for their freedom, and again, it basically just said that you will not be denied the right to vote based upon the color of your skin. That's what it said.
Yeah.
It didn't say every black man could vote. If what qualified, it said, but we cannot say you can't vote because you're black. You can't do that. Now, you can put other things in there, like poll taxes, like they did do.
Yeah.
Age, like they did do.
Which I recommend the poll tax.
Poll tax, age, certain things.
Yeah.
So states said other things, but they couldn't say,
have a state.
You cannot vote. And they could say you couldn't vote because you're a woman. They could say you couldn't vote because you're an immigrant, but they couldn't say color.
The very last question I'll ask you before Chuck, because I know Chuck is chopping at the bit, but like, do you believe that elections should be controlled federally or locally?
It should be controlled locally.
Okay.
Because federally it gets really, really weird, as you know. Yeah.
All right.
We'll see. That's the issue, and that that was the issue at hand at the time during Reconstruction, because the battle between the parties, North, South, was a question of, and it goes all the way back to the founding of the country, right? The perspective of the Federalists versus the Anti-Federalists, the position of Madison and Hamilton versus the position of Thomas Jefferson and Yates and others. The issue in the South was that the Republican Party agenda at the time during Reconstruction was to establish the federal government as being the superior of the two entities. We're talking federal versus versus the states. I mean, you guys you said so many things. Where's your notepad at, Chuck? No, I need a notepad.
It's my fault. I didn't.
I don't mean to. Because this probably open up a whole another can of worms. This is another major discussion. Chad and I have been having this discussion on his platform. We've been getting a lot of engagement, going over the Civil War, what was his actual motivations, who was Abraham Lincoln, what was his real agenda, so on and so forth. But there were a lot of voting restrictions for blacks in the South and in the North. And in fact, Illinois in particular and various other northern states were not only were blacks not permitted to vote, but many northern states would not allow blacks into their state. They have various laws. If you came to the state, you couldn't move to Illinois and in Michigan, Ohio, some of these other states. You couldn't, move, set up shop and establish yourself and start a family. They weren't allowed,
and these were northern states.
These were northern states. And what upset a lot of Southerners was the hypocrisy, because blacks weren't treated particularly well in the North either. And there was a better communal type relationship between blacks and whites that was fostered by way of familiarity, even if there was a slave master, slave owner dynamic, that kind of a kinship and just kind of being, used to one another.
I mean, Abraham Lincoln said that slavery was the most weirdest. He was the most peculiar institution.
Well, he called it a peculiar institution, but Lincoln didn't particularly care too much for black people, to be honest. And this just
I didn't say you did.
No. I'm not saying you. I'm not saying that. But what vexed Lincoln more so than anything else was this idea that pretty much each individual state can do within, of course, within constitutional confines for sure, but that states have a stake in the governing of their own affairs. And this interfered with Lincoln's long-term vision for his there was a term for it. I forgot what it's called, but the whole issue of the split between North and South, and this was, a lot of people say, well, the Democrat Party and slavery and these things. Well, that's not entirely true, if it is true at all, to be honest. The Democrat Party...
It's about to get good now.
Yeah, the idea was about tariffs and high taxes. And the idea of Lincoln, and there were many others like him who had this idea that the United States was to become a kind of rival to the British Empire and to the sort of newly emerging German Empire under Otto von Bismarck. When you see the consolidation of Germany sort of happening around the same time that the Civil War or the war between the states was going on. And so there was a lot to Chad's point, a nuance there, because like you said, Vince, a lot of people looked at the Republicans as though they didn't belong there, because the Republican Party agenda at the time was to undermine the authority of the states for the purpose of creating this new sort of America, and for so much talk, and for so much that we talk about with the progressive era in the late 19th century, the early 20th century, and the eugenicists and all that stuff, and we may even get into some of that stuff, but the mid 1800s, from the Civil War and on into the era of Reconstruction, that in fact was America's first progressive era. A lot of people don't think of it that way. But if you know and you understand the ideas of the Whigs and then later on the Republican Party, that's what the schism was all about. It was about the federal government versus the states. Even if you go back and you read Alexander Hamilton and Federalist 34 or Federalist 17, and Alexander Hamilton talked about a lot of these things, but Alexander Hamilton was a big executive branch guy.
Yes.
He's a Federalist.
He was a big executive branch guy.
Well, he wasn't a Federalist, though.
But when you go to government...
He was a Federalist in name only. But the word Federalist and Anti-Federalist are actually flipped.
Flip-top, yeah.
But when you look at what the actual... they call it, when you look at the Federalist Papers, and you look at the Anti-Federalist Papers and the Brutus Papers, it's actually true that people like Patrick Henry and Robert Yates and Luther Martin and others, they were the actual real Federalists, because they are the ones who really believed in limited government power. They're the ones who really believed in checks and balances. They are the ones who really believed in sovereignty of the states and the local communities. That's true federalism. Right. But it was a political kind of game of semantics.
Yes, but there's a time when theory bumps into reality.
Let me jump in with Vincent Dunn, please.
When theory bumps into reality, like for instance, when we started the country, we had the Articles of Confederation. All the states didn't want the federal government to have any power. And for years they said, this cannot work.
I agree.
Theory bumped into reality.
I agree.
And they said, we got to rework this thing. They came with the Constitution.
I agree.
The Constitution stays there. The 10th Amendment is strong for years.
Right.
You have Thomas Jefferson and James Madison that comes out with the Virginia, Kentucky resolutions that said basically the states can nullify any law they don't like.
Right.
And have the right to succession.
And then they reneged.
Yeah, and then people looked around and then you see John C. Calhoun go to South Carolina with the nullification crisis. Him and Andrew Jackson about to go to blows over it. Yeah. Andrew Jackson's going to hang everybody in South Carolina.
Yeah. So
and they broke that down. So now this is coming to a head. Right. So what happens? You get all this new land with the Louisiana Purchase, all this new land after the war.
West.
What are we going to do with it? Right. Are we going to make America a superpower like it is up north? Manhattan was worth more than the whole South combined. Right. Or are we going to make it a slave nation where we are going to be taken over by the Europeans and Lowest who are industrialized? And we got half of our country with slaves and cotton.
Yeah, this is not sustainable.
What are we going to do? We need to build a railroad from here to California, and we can't take it through slave country. Yeah. We need to build factories, and we can't go down there arguing. My hometown, Brownsville, Tennessee.
Let me ask you
some of the best guys.
No, you got to stop. Go ahead.
It was one of the poorest counties in our state for one reason. Most of the white people own the land for cotton. They wouldn't allow factories to be built on it. They wouldn't allow anything to be done with it. But a few people had the money, cotton field, and my daddy was a sharecropper there. It finally started becoming something when they started taking that land away. And now they built a Ford factory down there that's going to pay, the starting wage is going to be about $60,000 a year, and it's going to hire 10,000 people. Right. And they did it because they finally used the law to take this land away from these people that would never, ever let it go. Yeah. And now the people are benefiting from the fact that now we can industrialize this place that's only about 40 miles from Memphis. And we have interstates, and now the people there, and I'm going there, and it's changing. And people now have money, and people are building houses, and they're not poor anymore. And so that's why they looked at the South and they said, listen, these guys, these plantation owners are going to keep it this way forever unless we go down and break this up.
Now that's my question.
And they broke it up.
I mean, that's an assumption. But I mean, it's not something I don't think we know for sure. It's especially, I mean, when you
they would have kept it.
Well, they did keep it for another 100 years.
I don't believe. I certainly don't believe that the South would have, various Southern states would have, kept the institution of slavery for perpetuity.
You don't think so?
No, I don't believe that.
Yeah.
I believe that.
The sharecropping system was basically the same thing without the name.
I believe that.
When you look at the writings of Jefferson Davis, the president of the Confederate,
I don't think that would have happened.
He himself didn't believe that slavery should exist in perpetuity.
It was going to change naturally, but they weren't going to let them go unless they were forced to let them go. Because even the thing that killed the sharecropping system now was a cotton picker. Finally, they got one cotton picker that could do the job of 50 field hands.
Cotton gin.
And with cotton gin made cotton. Yeah. But what put the slave, the sharecropper system out of business was a cotton picker.
Yeah.
When they could get one cotton picker and they could rent them and they could do the work of, and you know what? And here's the thing a lot of people don't know. A lot of sharecroppers got mad because the cotton picker took their jobs away. And they had to find another way to make a living, and then guess what happened? The factories came down and they just started working there. So the economy always found a way. So as they freed up people from the cotton fields, the children went to school. They learned how to read and write, and the South changed forever.
And it wasn't only that; it was also the fact too that there were a lot of
y'all won't let Chuck be great.
There were a lot of slave owners in the South.
It's okay.
Who were freeing their slaves upon their death. And other such cases. So it wasn't just, and I know you're not making this point, so it wasn't just industrialization that was marking kind of the end of slavery. There was a number of factors, both moral and practical. I was going to say that.
But here's the question, then why then did they say that they would stop the Civil War and rejoin the Union if Abraham Lincoln pulled back the 13th Amendment and then ratify it?
Who said
freeing
that?
the slaves. Alexander Stevenson when he met with Lincoln and Seward.
But he was the vice president.
Yeah, but he was bringing the message from Jeff Davis. They passed the 13th Amendment before the war was over. They came down and said that we will get back with the Union. We will end the war if you guys pull back this 13th Amendment. And Lincoln said, no, slavery is done. And the war went on for almost another 4 or 5 months. And almost 100,000 more died because Abraham Lincoln refused to pull back the 13th Amendment. He said, I'm not going to do it. I got Arkansas. And he needed some, because they still believe that they need, Lincoln said the South is still part of the Union. Therefore, I'm going to need Southern states to pass
a union that he essentially kind of sort of forced them back into.
Yeah.
And essentially removed a lot of their constitutional rights from them, especially, I don't even know you're talking about the 13th Amendment, but especially when it came to the passage of the 14th Amendment, which a lot of, a handful of Southern states didn't participate in. I mean, many people, if you look into the passage of the 14th Amendment, a lot of people talk about, and I think rightfully so, that the 14th Amendment was never legally passed. I don't know if anything.
Well, they did some things to pass it. They went down to Tennessee and basically arrested the legislature and made them vote for it. So they did some things. It was politics.
Yeah, it was a lot of bad politics going on. And I think even I can't recall, I may be wrong on the 2 states here. It may have been, what was it, Oregon and Ohio, something. But there were 2 states that weren't in the South or were part of the Confederate States.
One was definitely Nevada,
and they rescinded their vote, because they were so upset at what essentially the Republican dominated legislature had did to the South after allowing them to participate in some way with the passage of the 13th Amendment, then to turn around and say that, well, no, you have no stake here, because essentially they claim that your states are not functioning.
Yeah.
But they were functioning not too long ago, but now they're no longer. And
Chuck, he could have got rougher than that because they wanted to hang all of them.
They
wanted to kill every last one of them.
And talking about Southerners. Well, especially, I mean,
and basically when you deal with they suspended habeas corpus. They basically said that you are in rebellion of the United States of America and that you are treasonous against our government, which constitutionally you can't do. You can't commit treason against the United States government.
Well, is secession, is that treason?
Well, that's the thing. They were U.S. senators. And then they decided to pick up arms against the United States government and say they were trying to take it over. And as you can remember with John Brown, when John Brown took Harper's Ferry, it was Robert E. Lee that went and got him.
Right.
And basically said he's a traitor.
Right.
Hang him. Because he picked up arms against the United States of America. Then Robert E. Lee turned around and did the same exact thing. So you are a soldier of the United States Army, trained at West Point.
Right.
And you picked up arms against the Army of the United States of America. When they came down south, you were supposed to say the Army is down south, we don't attack our army. Instead,
was it their army?
Well, it was the Army of the United States Army, the United States. The Army of the United States.
Are we talking about South Carolina at this point in 61?
The Army of the
was South Carolina still a part of the United States?
According to what Abraham Lincoln and you can't succeed. They said secession was illegal because there was
but he was wrong.
Talked about the fact
he was wrong.
Yeah, he was.
Yeah,
wrong.
now that was theory.
Ooh, I'm a
because
horrible
nobody
moderator.
can find in the Constitution where a state has a right to succeed.
We just talked about earlier how states did have a right to basically secede from the Union, did we not?
It's not in the Constitution.
Right, but it was agreed upon, wasn't it?
No, it was not. It was a theory that Jefferson and Madison had based on the 10th Amendment. It was a theory. It wasn't implied in the Constitution. You can go in front of the Supreme Court, different lawyers, different judges, different lawyers, different concepts, right? So, but it had never been adjudicated. It had never been like, they said Dred Scott had no rights that a white man needed to adhere to. That was theory.
Right.
But you could have got another judge that said something completely different. Right. So if you had taken this in from the right judge, they would have said, yes, the South has a right to succeed.
Question
but
for
it
you.
had never been adjudicated on.
OG, was it adjudicated or did we just go the war route? I mean,
Well, Abraham Lincoln said this hasn't been adjudicated. You have no right to succeed. Give me your legal, tell me the court that has given you the right to succeed and we will adhere to it. Okay. You can't show me that. So you are the people in the South. Now, these states aren't in rebellion. There are people in the South who are in rebellion to the United States of America and our government. They've shot at our troops. They've confiscated our property. We're coming to get it back and arrest these people.
But can you point to one individual person who popularized the idea that individual states had no right to secede? Was it Lincoln, or could you point to someone else?
Well, Andrew Jackson basically first said it when John C. Calhoun went down there and started talking about, he was telling South Carolina because of the tariff situation, that we are going to succeed. And Andrew Jackson, you have no right to succeed. If you vote to succeed, I'm going to come down there and I'm going to hang all of you from the first tree that we get to. It was getting ready to get adjudicated, but then they made a deal.
Right.
And so the whole thing just kind of went away.
Right.
And it remained theory for the next, until the Civil War. And the Southerners believed it, and they had this theory about it, but it had never been adjudicated or put into law. So it became a concept of might makes right.
Now, see how you
moderator hat here.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Okay, I am in loving this gentleman's banter. I really am, but I think we gotta move on.
Okay, all right.
No, just like black folks always stuck in the past.
Chuck's gonna make a point.
See, don't squelch the conversation.
But this is
only just now getting good.
This is a healthy conversation because this adds more layers, and it shows how complicated it is, not only to form a nation, but how to
keep
run it,
one,
how to keep it together, to understand its laws. It kind of transcends. It goes beyond,
because it was the same concept when the founding fathers said we have a right to leave Great Britain.
Right.
King George said you don't. So guess what they said? We can't get it. We can't get along. So we got to get it on.
Right.
And the war is going to determine who's right here.
Okay. And that's what happened.
So the South said it. Lincoln said it. Lincoln said we can't get it along.
Okay.
So we got to get it on. And whoever wins this war will be determined who's right in this.
Right.
And Lincoln said we're going to decide that might makes right. And he said it.
That's why, we're having this conversation. It's not that I'm disagreeing, because you're just laying out, some facts about history. And this is why I was trying to lure some more of these details out, because I think these are the important conversations that people ought to start having if they want to better understand how our country should function, and how it is intended. It goes beyond this whole partisanship thing. When you talk about
first inaugural address, you remember what he said? He said, I promised the South that I will give a 13th Amendment allowing you to keep your slaves if you don't succeed.
Exactly. He
said, I was going to give you a 13th Amendment. We will never touch your slaves.
That's why we brought up the Corwin Amendment.
Exactly. We will never do
Project,
it.
Right.
And the South turned him down.
Right. Because, and this is the point I think.
And here was April trying to close the conversation down.
And I think this is an important conversation, because it's important.
How can you say it wasn't about slavery when was in the inaugural address?
No. But I think you can't say that. I think you sort of contradicted yourself, because if it wasn't about slavery, because Lincoln said on numerous occasions that as president of the United States, he has no authority. Because the idea of the Corwin Amendment, the original proposal of the 13th Amendment, was to ban the federal government from passing laws that interfered with slavery in each individual state.
Exactly.
Now, if Lincoln was such a man of conviction when it came to his moral opposition to slavery, then why would he even say such a thing? The reason
I don't think the argument was his moral opposition to slavery.
Or whatever it was.
He used it as leverage.
Or whatever it was.
To keep the Union together.
Exactly.
No, it wasn't that.
Because that's what Lincoln. Hold on. This is my belief. This is what Lincoln cared about most. He cared the most about, like you were talking about earlier, as far as expanding infrastructure and doing these things. Lincoln had all these various ideas about using tariffs, taxes to
his
fund
wealthy friends.
his wealthy friends and his internal improvement projects. We would call them corporate welfare today. This is another thing.
I will not let you talk about Lincoln.
But this is the type of nuanced conversation that we need to have.
Lincoln was an abolitionist. He was anti-slavery. He said that I don't want slavery expanded.
Right.
And
he was also the quintessential politician.
But he also talked about
why he was so great.
Listen, he talked about the ordinance in the 1787.
During the Civil War?
Listen, he said the Southwest Ordinance.
And how he treated Northerners?
But no, do you remember when he talked about the Northwest Ordinance? He said that when we made this nation, and when Great Britain gave us the territory from the 13 colonies to the Mississippi River, the founding fathers said slavery will not be allowed in certain territories, and y'all violated that. He said, now, you are in violation of the founding of this country, because the founding fathers even signed off on the Northwest Ordinance that slavery will not be allowed in these areas, and now you're spreading it.
Okay.
He said slavery is not supposed to be in these areas. You're violating the Northwest Ordinance. I don't appreciate it. And in his Cooper Union speech, he sat there and named all the founding fathers who had also signed the Constitution that signed the Northwest Ordinance that said slavery is not supposed to be in these areas.
Y'all trying to
but they did it anyway, and you're still expanding it. He said, I needed to stop.
But like Chad said,
and not taking it any further.
The quintessential politician.
But
because
the Southern states said this. They said that if we don't keep with the Missouri Compromise, one slave state, one northern state, Kansas Nebraska Act killed that. And so that's why they were angry, because the Kansas Nebraska Act killed the Missouri Compromise. It gave 1-1. Now Lincoln is saying, no, we're expanding, no more slavery. They say sooner or later our numbers are going to be so small in the House and the Senate that they're going to crush us, and we can't have that. So right now it's time for us to leave, because we don't have the leverage anymore to force these guys to give us one state. And so they said that they're going to crush us anyway. The plan is to crush us, y'all. Don't forget that. I was watching Godfather last night, and what did they say? They said, look, man, let's talk about your Godfather can live. And Michael said, no.
How many times
the job is to kill my father.
How many times a year do you watch Godfather?
I just saw it for the first time.
What?
I did. I loved it.
Well, everybody loves the Godfather.
I was yesterday years old.
But that's what the South said. No, their plan is to crush slavery.
Right.
It's to control us, control our economy. That's their job. They playing games. And it was true. They were going to crush them.
But see, that's my point. You talked about, I mean, it just brings us back to this whole notion, this idea of consensual government and the people. When you talked about civil rights and how we, form our laws. And like I said, in theory, it's supposed to be a system where, we consent. We have to give up a certain bit of our rights and so on, so that we can be governed. What say you? And I know this conversation go on forever. I know we got to move.
I'm trying to just fast forward 100 years.
This is the rhetorical question. This is a rhetorical question. Just try my best to hold it in, because again, it begs the question of what say you when it comes to self-determination. And I think the important thing, and when we're having this conversation, is to point out how, at least in my humble opinion, sure, it is you talking about slavery is, yes, it's justified to talk about that. But when you're talking about the theory idea of secession, it goes back to the rebellion, the war against the British. And when people say, well, and like you say, you can call it a theory, that's fair, that's fine. Say, well, how could we have just fought a war for independence against the British Empire, only to then turn around and create a society where the individual states within that union
can't do what they want to do.
What we want to do.
So, you're right, but that's what he said. The guy said that when the South loses this war, they will have on his tombstone, died of a theory.
Right. Well, see, that's the thing. And that's why just the conversation, this is not say I'm right, you're right. It's just the fact that these are the conversations that aren't being talked about. Why? Because slavery has been used since that time and onward as this rhetorical device, this political cudgel, this weapon to shape this narrative.
It does.
Right.
And when in fact we were dealing with many men who are a lot smarter than we are today. I was joking around with Chad earlier today, and I said I cannot name one person in the higher chamber or the lower chamber in the legislature who could write a collection of essays like the Federalist Paper, the Anti-Federalist Paper.
Today?
There is no James Madison today. There is no Alexander Hamilton today. We are represented by a bunch of buffoons.
They're idiots.
It couldn't be.
Agreed.
And so
Alexander Hamilton was a buffoon too.
Well, yeah,
but he was a very intelligent
buffoon. Yeah. I mean, we kind of,
I believe that Patrick Henry was another one. Heads
above him. Yeah, I like Patrick Henry a lot. I like George Mason a lot. But I mean,
now you apply those guys to the black minds and the black leadership of today. If we had those minds leading Black America right now, we wouldn't be having this conversation.
Oh yeah,
because they would have told.
Which leads me
go ahead.
To the conversation I want to have.
No, but I just think it's important because it just shows how much a lot of people don't talk about because perhaps they don't know. They don't. That it's a very rich history, and sometimes we like to boil things down to bad guys and good guys,
right?
Or bad parties and good parties. And the reality is that things are a bit more nuanced. Because you say you brought up Alexander Hamilton. Not Alexander Hamilton. I'm sorry, Andrew Jackson. And Andrew Jackson said, no. And Chad has said out of his own mouth that a lot of Andrew Jackson's ideas and things that he stood for, Chad is somewhat of an admirer of Andrew Jackson. And Andrew Jackson,
that's going to be hard to argue.
He that's one of the founding members of the Democrat Party. Yeah. And he said some of the exact same things that Lincoln said. There can be no secession. So see how nuanced it gets.
When he got up in that White House, you look out for the federal government.
For the federal government.
And when John C. Calhoun was the senator from South Carolina, he was out for the state South Carolina. Because as you know, the senators were elected from what? The state legislature
until the 17th Amendment.
And they had to go talk to they didn't talk to the people.
Right.
They talked to the legislatures.
That's right.
And the legislatures told them, this is what you go up to Washington and you tell them. And so they would go up there and they would talk to the federal government from the state legislatures, and it was a different dynamic. And they were really speaking for their state, not the people. The people talked to the legislature, and the legislature talked to the senator, and he took it up to Washington, D.C.
That's what a republic is.
And then, then we messed it up, when we decided.
Well, now you got the brain dead. Is it democracy? So
life is a burden, y'all.
What I want to do,
trying to figure this out for centuries. We ain't figured it out yet.
I think that how we figured out is this very last thing is to try to get men to get back to the concepts of the founding fathers when it came to freedom. When you get your freedom, what did they do? They go back to, they went there to their farms and their shops.
Preferably the anti-federalist founding fathers, but yes.
Everybody going to assert their position.
They went back to their farms and their shops, and they lived as free men.
Yes.
Right.
And they lived as men, getting mutual respect from one another.
Yeah.
The black men from the first Rhode Island who fought for the duration of the war, who stayed there from Bunker Hill to Yorktown, all black regiment, who fought. When it ended, what did they do? They went back home
to their farms and their families,
and were free men, and were respected amongst their peers, white and black. Why? Because they fought for their freedom.
Yeah.
And then they looked at the ones that went back to they never ever fought on the plantations that stayed and picked cotton, and they had no respect for them.
They were gentlemen.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, I'm out here fighting too.
I'll go ahead to fight to get.
And my fight
room. Go ahead. I'm done.
Forward.
We're done.
By the way.
So no, this has been good. I think we've done a nice survey of history. I just want to bring us forward just a little bit, maybe like 100 years.
We're like camping out.
We do. So what I want to
Civil Rights Act of 1866.
Oh, have mercy! No,
we still got another.
How the Supreme Court overturned all of it, didn't it?
Yeah, they did.
All of it. The Congress passed it. The Supreme Court kicked it out.
That was after Andrew Johnson vetoed it.
So Plessy versus Ferguson.
No, I don't want to talk about that either. Oh gosh. Okay. No, seriously. This is what I want to talk about.
Go ahead, April. Sure.
I was having a discussion with Vince about I appreciate how in your film you present the differences between Martin Luther King Jr. and Joseph H. Jackson. And it sparked this discussion that I said, we have got to record this and talk about this in person because it was just interesting. I appreciated how you talked about the difference in philosophy or methodology between the two. And if you want to succinctly spell that out for the audience, right? Spell that out. We'll need to introduce who Joseph H. Jackson was. Why was he, in your opinion, the better option than MLK? And then what I want to ask you, Vince, because this is what sparked this discussion. You was like, well, I get why you think Joseph H. Jackson was better, but I got issues with that Negro too. So I'll let you start, then I'll get to you, and then I want you to see if you can break the tie.
I'm gonna try.
If you come break the tie, because come now, let us reason together.
It's gonna be hectic, right?
It is.
So, just real quick, Joseph H. Jackson. He was born in Mississippi. He was 15 years old when Booker T. Washington passed. Whenever Booker T. Washington was poisoned and died.
Wait, you believe that he was killed?
Yes, Booker T. Washington.
You want
was
to
definitely
expound
killed.
on that? I'm just.
We had to have talk.
She doesn't want to camp out there.
No, I know she don't. That's why I'm teasing.
We're gonna take you in the kitchen. I just need you to bring out the meal so we can eat it.
So when you look at Joseph H. Jackson, which admittedly I don't agree with everything that he stood for or everything that he did.
Okay.
The same is true of literally anyone else in history.
Right.
I don't even agree entirely with Joseph H. Jackson's theology, right? But when it comes to the difference between he and Martin Luther King, it's Jackson's a clear winner.
Okay.
Joseph H. Jackson was a purveyor of the kind of Booker T. Washington school of thought insofar that you cast down your bucket where you are. That it's incumbent upon you to be a man of honor, and it's incumbent upon you to be a woman of virtue. That's your responsibility. Joseph H. Jackson would become the leader, the teacher of Olivet Baptist Church in Chicago. And he would serve there till the day that he died. He would also become the president of the National Baptist Convention, which boasted around 5 million colored churchgoers.
Did he call us coloreds?
You can say people of color. Can't
I love it. We're colored again. Yay.
So he was the president of the National Baptist Convention, and the bylaws were that you can't run for president, I think, more than 1 or 2 terms.
Yeah.
Okay.
But the fact of the matter is, Joseph H. Jackson saw the writing on the wall. He saw what was happening in the culture. He saw that the so-called proponents of the social gospel were making inroads. And he didn't want to see the National Baptist Convention succumb to that poison, succumb to what Paul, the Apostle Paul, called a counterfeit gospel.
Right.
He didn't want for the National Baptist Convention to succumb to that. So he kept running and he kept winning, and he would win by a landslide.
So we at least agree that his term was up, and technically by the bylaws, he wasn't technically supposed to run again, but he did, and he won.
Yes, you have to understand the times. We were in the middle of the Cold War, and the communists set their sights upon churchgoers.
They did.
Particularly Negro churchgoers. And a lot of Negro churchgoers were doing the bidding
of communists,
of the Communist Party,
right,
of the Soviet line. And so Jackson knew this full well. Whenever they launched the so-called Montgomery bus boycott in Montgomery, Jackson initially saw it as a good thing. So he called King and said, hey, we got a bus or two to donate to you. King said, no, I'm not interested in the buses. So what Jackson then did is he collected $1,000 from his church, $1,000 from the National Baptist Convention, and he donated $2,000 to King, which was a lot of money in 1957. King wanted the money. He didn't want the buses. And so
to be clear, were the buses supposed to be used to usher people to and fro in light of the fact that they weren't riding the bus?
The thing about Jackson is that Jackson, again, he comes from the Booker T. Washington School of Thought.
Right. He's solving problems.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, don't beg the white man to sit on the front of the bus.
Yeah. Here's some buses.
Here's some buses. Create your own black bus company.
Right. And there were already black bus companies.
There were already Negro bus companies. And so again, King refused the money. The buses, he wanted the money. And Jackson soon thereafter figured out, oh, I know what these guys are up to. And so, long story short, Stanley Levison, who was King's handler and advisor, advised that if you were to sit atop the National Baptist Convention, this would be huge
for you,
for our agenda. And so King at the time was young. He was fresh out of college. It didn't make a whole lot of sense to take this young person and put him at the head of the National Baptist Convention. So
they needed a puppet.
So they ran a man by the name of Gardner C. Taylor. So they ran Gardner C. Taylor, who was a veteran in the National Baptist Convention, who was also a proponent of the social gospel. And the idea was to get Gardner Taylor elected to the head of the National Baptist Convention for King, who was at the time the head of what was called the Sunday School. Yeah, the Sunday School wing of the convention. He was the vice president of that contingent. Ultimately, King would run and take charge of the National Baptist Convention, and this would be a layup in terms of having a captive audience for the furthering of
his agenda,
their agenda. And so when you look at the correspondence between King and other ministers, he's trying to build an army against Joseph H. Jackson. So he's writing letters at the command of
Levison?
Stanley Levison to all these ministers, trying to basically build a camaraderie, build an
division.
army. Yes.
Infiltrate in.
Saying, next year is our year. We're going to finally get Taylor.
I mean, that's 5 million black folks to influence.
Get Jackson. And so they had the convention. Of course, Jackson wins. And the Taylor contingent demands a roll call. They demand a roll call and they rush the stage. And in the kerfuffle, A.G. Wright out of Detroit, Michigan is pushed off the stage, cracked his head, and dies. As a result of this, a lot of people believe Jackson kicked King out of the convention. That's not true. A committee within the convention voted to have King removed. So they kicked King out of the convention. They kicked his friends out of the convention. And they would go that same year in 1961 and start the so-called Progressive National Baptist Convention. So this gives you, this is insight into this notion that King actually wasn't as nonviolent as we're taught he was.
Right.
And so when you look at somebody like Jackson and his methods, I mentioned in our docuseries the Freedom Farm The Freedom Farm was started by the National Baptist Convention, where they bought 400 acres of land, I believe, in Tennessee. And they allowed black sharecroppers who were being cheated by their farmers and the landlords who wanted to protest. Jackson said, we're not going to protest. Here's 400 acres of farmland. Work the land, pocket the money, save the money, buy your own farm. So you're not dependent on a landlord, that you're not dependent on someone else.
Right.
Again, Booker T. Washington School of Thought, cast down your bucket where you are. We have the methods, we have the means to make something of ourselves.
Let's stop begging and let's start working.
Begging, stop crying, stop moaning. It's on you to use the resources that you have to be a man. And I say be a man because that's a very interesting thing to look at.
Simple.
Because what is Jackson's perspective when it comes to being a man versus kings? Well, Jackson said that I wish you would stop complaining like women. I wish you would be a man. He said
step-ins.
Yeah, he said stop. He said if you're not going to be a man, start wearing step-ins and braid your hair. And it's interesting. You see a lot of colored men today with braided hair.
You don't hear people say step-ins.
well, it's interesting. You see a lot of colored men today with braids and dreads.
Yeah.
But I digress.
Some of them in dresses now.
Yeah, exactly.
That too.
And so he said, if you're not going to be a man, braid your hair, start wearing step-ins. But God has carefully made you and fixed you just right. And it's on you to be a man. Right. That's what Jackson's position was. King's position, when you look at the NBC interview that he did in the late 60s with when he was at Ebenezer Baptist Church, he's behind the pulpit. He's standing up. He's being interviewed by the reporter. And he said, well, we can't be a man because if you look at the housing conditions, if you look at, we haven't been able to be people. We haven't been able to be men. And
he wants his dignity.
We just want to be men. And so it's like, and so you have King predicating manhood on what the government does.
Oh, no, white. I would say on white acceptance. I mean, he was like crashing out because we want to sit at this counter with them and they won't let us.
That was the rules, though. April. He didn't really mean that because his end goal, and I just call a spade a spade. I mean, his end goal was just the full-fledged communism across the breadth and width of this nation.
But he believed in the incremental, gradual way of getting there.
The race question. That again.
That was just his tool.
That doesn't mean something.
That goes back to
he was utilitarian. And so when you look at somebody like King, he was. People forget the fact that this man was trained in the communist perspective of the Hegelian dialectic.
Right.
He was trained to. He said himself that he rejected the fundamental gospel. He said that his Sunday school teachers believed the fundamentalist line of Christianity. They believed in the virgin birth. They believed in the resurrection. They believed in the literal existence of hell, all of which he rejected.
Yeah.
Right.
He said that when he found the social gospel, now we have something, right? This idea that the gospel completely free of a salvific nature.
No, there's no atonement.
There's no atonement. Yeah. There's no miracle of Christ raising from the dead to save you, a sinner. That doesn't exist as far as the social gospel is concerned.
No.
The social gospel is only concerned with politics. It's only concerned with legislation. It's only concerned with building a kind of Tower of Babel 2.0. That's what the social gospel is in an elementary kind of nutshell.
Right.
That's something that King could get behind. He rejected what the Bible says about Christ, what the Bible says about the gospel, and he embraced, again, what Paul called a counterfeit gospel. That is what he told Coretta Scott at the time, who later became his wife, that's the gospel that he would preach to the world. One where there's a nationalization of industry, one where there's a radical redistribution of wealth. That's the gospel, says King, that I will preach to the world. And he would go on, because a lot of people like to give me flack and criticize me and say, oh, he said that when he was in college. No, King would continue to preach that same counterfeit gospel to the day that he died.
Yes.
The mountaintop speech is chock full of the so-called of the counterfeit gospel, right? So that's what King would do until the day that he died. And so this gives you a kind of philosophical and theological difference between someone like a Jackson and someone like a King. And so it makes sense then why King would want to remove Jackson from his post at the National Baptist Convention, and that he would then step in and move the largest colored church organization in the country to the socialistic social gospel. That's what King wanted to do. And that's the difference between the two. Again, I'm not endorsing everything that Jackson stood for and everything that he said. But when you look at them comparatively, Jackson is clearly the better option.
And I don't disagree with that.
Right.
This is the problem I have, though. Jackson had a very large megaphone. And we talk about the Godfather again.
Yeah. That's absolutely.
Vito.
You remember? Are
you really?
You remember when Vito was talking to Michael, and he told Michael, the guy that comes to you with the Barzini meeting, he's a traitor.
Barzini.
How clear was that?
Right.
Crystal. No, he didn't do that with King. He didn't tell us he's a liar, he's a communist, he's a Marxist, he's a traitor. Mark him.
To be fair,
stay away from him.
To be fair, he did talk about what the civil rights movement was.
But he didn't do that.
But he never called King out by name.
Right. He died in 1990.
Yeah.
I was a grown man.
Same year I was born.
And I never heard this.
Okay.
Until I grew up and read it about 5 or 6 years ago.
He should have named names.
He should have named names.
He should have been marked and avoided.
Clear. It's like, I'm knowing a guy hunting you.
I thought you were going to say it in like Jackson, because he was, very, he was kind of buddy with a lot of the Democrats.
He was there too.
Oh, we gonna get there. Wait.
Maybe that was the reason why he didn't do it, because he was part of the Daily Machine. Y'all know that.
He was.
And he had taken the black church and made it political. And again, in my mind, if you're going to be I go by this old Thomas Wolfe saying, the culture are the arts elevated to a set of beliefs. The arts make the culture make the politics. I believe that you go a step further and say religion, and then the arts, and then the culture.
Okay.
Because religion is supposed to be there to watch the culture. And if the religion gets them screwed up, the culture is going to get messed up behind the religion. Even though the religion is part of the arts, but the religion is really the thing. That's why our First Amendment is freedom of religion. The religion and the virtue and the morality of the people are going to determine everything. And when the religion goes bad, everything goes bad. This is why Jesus was such a gangster, man. He stood up at that temple and said, your problem is not the Romans. There's some suckers right over there. There's some Pharisees. It's the Sadducees. Make no mistake about it. Liars, hypocrites, whitewashed tombs, vipers like your father, the devil. He made it crystal clear who the problems were. We did not have that with these people, and it hurt us very badly because it was always nuanced. This is why when I do my stuff, it is straight no chaser with me. I tell you exactly who they are. If you find yourself a black preacher dealing with the Democratic Party, he's a liar, he's an apostate, he's an affront to God. And these guys went out there and they stood with the Democratic Party, knowing what they were doing, knowing the things that they were with the feminists, with the gay rights activists, with the atheists, all of these weirdos and crazy that had gotten involved in it, using the moral absoluteness of what was going on with black people to ride and get legislation passed for themselves, which is what they did, because you can't discriminate on account of sex is also in the 1964 Civil Rights Act, right? Yeah. And they weren't even out there marching for that, right? They just had to be included, We was getting our asses whooped for it, but they were included in that,
They were lumped in as a joke.
Yeah, they were only as a joke, exactly. So that's the problem I have with Jackson. He had a large megaphone. Like you said, 10 million member group of
5
people.
million.
A lot of money. A lot of money. Could have been put in banks. Could have, like you said, the land. Do it everywhere.
Well,
should have kept doing it.
To be fair to Jackson, though, because while I agree with you that he should have named names, at the same time, when you are the head of the National Baptist Convention and you see people who are flirting with the kind of ideology, the kind of methods that King and his faction are producing, and not only that, they have the support of the liberal press, of the mainstream press, and you are trying to tread these waters in such a way that it's like, man, I'm losing my people.
I disagree.
You remember the blue bomb.
I'm giving you
But
perspective.
you remember the blue bomb. when Dr. King got put in jail and
yes,
they needed Kennedy to win.
Oh, the brochure.
Yeah, the blue bomb.
The blue bomb. This is how the National Baptist Convention was connected. That the Sunday before the election, they sent out 10 million of these pieces of paper to every black church in America saying, vote Kennedy. Because he called Coretta Scott King when Dr. King was locked up in jail.
And Coretta Scott King, by the way, was more radical than Martin.
Yes, he was.
Absolutely.
Agreed.
Yes.
And it was so hooked up that they swayed the election because of a phone call. And he couldn't do the blue bomb every Sunday to tell everybody King was a Messiah.
Like do it
Marxist.
Do it every Sunday.
They showed the connectivity of their church and how powerful it was, and they did not do it because Jackson wanted the same thing. He just wanted different methods. He wanted civil rights. He did speeches on civil rights all the time. He spoke political all the time. He'd go to NAACP conventions and talk about the Civil Rights Act. We want civil rights, civil rights, civil rights. To hell with civil rights because it makes you believe that man can give you what only God can give you.
I agree with that.
And he was pushing it as hard as King. He's just using he didn't want to do the marches. Now, he didn't mind doing the NAACP role.
He didn't like the agitation.
Right. But lobbying and the courts were fine with him.
I have no problem. And I have many faults with the NAACP, but for me, when it comes to like addressing an issue on its face, I believe that the place to do that is in the courts.
Yeah, and that's what Jackson wanted to do.
And that's
courts and lobbying legislation.
Right. And
instead of going there fighting and sitting in
and agitating and all the things.
Exactly.
And so for me, it's like, you know, as much as I hate to admit it, I do agree more so with the NAACP approach in terms of arguing with the legality and the constitutionality of a thing more so than the King method.
Well, you know they did 10 times more than King them did.
Right.
And King took credit for it.
Right.
But
NAACP was actually doing it. But my point though is that I'm not saying that it's right. I'm merely saying that I understand the perspective that Jackson may have had in terms of being the president of this convention, which had all of these network of churches saying that, wow, King really has the ear of the president. King has the press. King has a lot of people in our convention. And so how do I try to gradually win them back without necessarily calling out the individual and therefore causing this, you know, not necessarily causing a rift because the rift has already started.
Do what the Apostle Paul did. Have I become your enemy?
Let me finish. Not necessarily causing a rift because the rift has already started, but how do I try to diplomatically deal with this issue in such a way that people understand? Because he was speaking broadly when he said the civil rights faction has communist infiltration. He said that. He subsequently said that the Black radical movement in the 70s that succeeded King, that these are people who are led by communists. He didn't call out names. Right. He just said, broadly speaking, these organizations.
That is the problem. You have to come out with something.
I agree.
Like this, and you have to have the fight.
I agree.
You don't undermine. You don't backbite.
I agree.
You say what James A. Garfield said. A brave man looks the devil in the eye and calls him a devil.
And that's one of Jackson's failures.
The reason why Malcolm X was so effective with 100 times less of a following than King is because Malcolm would confront. He's a liar, he's Uncle Tom. He said he's wanted to sit beside white men on the toilet. The March on Washington was a farce on Washington. Malcolm said it out loud and people listened because nobody else would say it.
The Bible instructs us to do that.
Always confront. And that's the problem. Yes. And Jackson wanted to use the church as a political push for the Democratic Party also, because he was very political. He spoke a lot about civil rights.
But for the Democratic Party, come on, Vince, that's not entirely true. He was a machine, man.
But
dude, he literally endorsed Nixon, who was a Republican.
He endorsed Nixon, but that was in '68. But during the civil rights movement, he was all in with Johnson and Daley. This was afterward. 1968 was Nixon. He didn't endorse Nixon in '60. He
was an Eisenhower man as well, who was a Republican.
Yeah, but he didn't endorse Nixon in '60 when he came against Kennedy. That was Kennedy had 80% of the black community voted for John F. Kennedy in 1960, and that was because of the blue bomb that went through the National Baptist Convention. He was behind that. The Daley machine was behind that because he couldn't have won Illinois without the Daley machine and Sam Giancana.
It's about saying the mob in '60.
Yeah, so the whole Daley machine was behind that, and he was behind that.
Okay.
Johnson and Kennedy got in because they gave him Illinois. They also did the blue bomb. They were involved in the Johnson-Kennedy administration for 8 years.
So,
now,
Vince,
he went for, he did go for Nixon in 68, but the damage had been done, and they still, after they were trying to lionize King and martyr him and make him this national hero, nobody came out and did what Khrushchev did with Stalin.
And Jackson should have. I concur.
Khrushchev came out after Stalin died and said, y'all, Stalin was nothing but a killer.
Yeah.
We cannot honor him any longer. Take him out of the Kremlin wall, bury him in an unmarked grave, and told everybody who he was. Nobody on the black side that has the nerve to do that to King yet.
None of them have done it. But y'all too.
Jackson knew everything and did not do it.
Even the hoe chasing.
Yeah, and I agree with you.
And we have been led into a terrible spot in America because of it. And he knew it and didn't tell me, and I got an attitude about it.
Right.
My pushback though is that because if you're saying if you're talking more so in terms of timing, I agree. Like, yes, Johnson. I mean, there's pictures of Jackson alongside Johnson and things of this nature. But holistically, again, Jackson endorsed Eisenhower. He endorsed Nixon. He endorsed Reagan. So this idea, and this is the only portion of what you said that I'm pushing back on, that he was shilling for the Democrat Party is not true on its face.
Well, I said between 60 and 68, but also he was always part of the data machine. I don't know if he ever left it.
Yeah.
So when it comes down to, federal politics versus state politics. But when it came down to mostly him telling the United States of America and telling the black community about Martin Luther King Jr.
Yeah, he should have done that.
The damage that was going to happen.
I agree.
Us following this. He had the megaphone, a bigger megaphone. It should have been a fight. It's like we talked about the Civil War, right? We can't get along, so we got to get it on.
Right.
I'm not going to not tell my people about you.
Yeah, he should
They
have.
have to know.
And then
because if they don't know this, they're going to die.
And when they changed the name of the street that his church is on to Martin Luther King Jr. Drive, he moved the front door to the adjacent street so as to not have his church on Martin Luther King Jr. Drive.
Yeah, so basically
that, like,
it was a cowardly move.
I would have done the same thing.
Yeah, it wasn't like a censorship.
But as petty as it was,
a cowardly
you should have done more.
Yeah, he should have done
a coward. I mean, come on.
The reason why, as a shepherd, if he had been taking the role of the pastor, elder, bishop more seriously, theologically, he could have easily pointed out the issues with King.
The Bible says to rebuke. The Bible says not to participate in darkness, but to expose it. To do so in the presence of all. So yes, I totally agree. He should have named names. He should have called it out. He should have said Martin Luther King instead of Ellison. They mean you no good. They are representative of a counterfeit gospel.
Right. He could have exposed a whole band of these freak nasty diddy crap preachers.
He did it.
That's what they were.
He did it in a broad way.
I'll be cracking up.
He talked about how these factions or these undercurrents are present in these movements and in these organizations. He didn't go the extra mile in terms of calling out the names.
Well, I think the danger was so imminent. He didn't warn us that the house is on fire. It was almost like he saw the house on fire. Was like, I mean, should I go pour some water on it?
My position, and again, hear me. I agree with both you, April, and you, Vince, that he should have called names. I agree with you. But I'm willing to take what he did give in terms of saying these organizations have as its driving motor communist influences.
But
that I will take.
Chad, the truth. You had to dig for Jackson. It wasn't like he was ever president in your life like Jesse Jackson, Al Sharpton.
Jackson was more popular than King in his day.
Yeah, but
which is why he should have said what he needed to say.
How did you find out about Jackson?
I think his
How
point
old were you?
That
I was probably 28.
People don't know because
you have to find him. It wasn't like he was there. You said, "Who's this guy?"
Yeah,
and then you looked him up, as I did.
He's a footnote now.
Yeah, and you say, "Wow!" Yeah. And you are over the National Baptist Convention with 10 million members, a boatload of money.
Because I think what you're about to say, Vince, to preempt you, that had he been more direct and called MLK out by name, perhaps his profile would have then
Yes.
because there was a quote unquote rivalry between the two of them.
But he's remembered. He's remembered in the kingdom, and that's what matters.
He is, but he needed. But his job was to save. Was to
He
bring
left us to a wolf.
Yeah.
His job was to bring us to Christ, and for me to sit there with somebody that I'm supposed to know, who knows that I'm getting ready. Like for instance, I know you guys wouldn't do this to me, but you see a dude spike my drink right here,
right,
and then y'all watch me drink it. Right. And then after I'm convulsing and dying, I found out that you knew. And I'm going to say, man, you knew he put that in my drink and you watched me drink it.
Yeah,
fair point.
And this is what I'm saying about Jackson. It's the same thing. You knew this guy was a communist. You knew he was a Marxist. You knew he wasn't a Christian. You knew he was a hoe chaser. You knew all of it. And you allowed him to go up and do this march on Washington, go before the White House, write legislation for us.
Right.
Allow him to be put in the history books. You allowed a national holiday to come in this guy's name, and you didn't tell us anything?
They ain't say
Man, I
nothing.
need to go dig up your grave and set your bones on fire for that.
That's a little extreme.
You know how they get the
Vince mad about it.
you know, the Pope, you dig him up and hold a trial.
Vince is mad about it.
The cadaver trial. Yeah.
I don't know what I'm about to say, but
All right, so can you help settle the arguments
I don't want to go that far with it.
or bring
Just go and urinate on the tombstone or something.
bring some clarity to it, or at least what are your thoughts?
I think we're all in agreement that Jackson stood for some great things. Had the people, black folks in particular, heeded his words, and the history of the country, and again the black community, such as it is, more specifically, would have been completely different. But
do you think it was self-preservation why he didn't say more?
Well, see, that's what I was going to say. I was going to give just a few historical notes when it comes to Jackson, as far as from my research and what I've learned about him. And in a weird way, I think it's going to kind of help you and Vince's point a little bit more, because I'm trying to figure out the why.
Did I look like I was taking a side? I am a moderator.
No.
Kind of look of it more as a why.
You
because
literally use the word coward. You can't say that and then say I was just being moderate and neutral. Come on now.
You just being mean. You see moderate. She didn't put an expletive.
Yeah, exactly.
The event in what was it, Kansas City, and of course when Joseph H. Jackson, I think he came to the funeral of Reverend.
Did he?
Yeah, he gave a
of A.G.
speech
Wright.
there. Yeah.
Oh, A.G. Wright.
A.G.
Yeah.
Wright. Yeah, he attended the funeral, and Jackson did.
Okay, yeah.
And he spoke. There was a line when he spoke at the funeral, and again, I don't believe he said King by name, but he said something to the effect that these people talk a lot about God, but so he said something to the effect that they talk about God, but God is not in them.
Why are you veiling the message, sir? I needed him to say the word. Y'all see how hard I go after Jamal Bryant? I needed him to do it like that.
These
John the
mics,
Baptist, right, going after Herod.
These mics are individually connected, so he can literally cut off my mic and only make it to where Chuck's mic is picking up the audio.
So my whole point wasn't even to get you to jump back in. But I was talking about the whole incident that occurred at the National Bank, because Chad said that they want a roll call. From my understanding, and I could be wrong, it gets minor detail, it doesn't really matter. I think what matters the most is the fight that took place that results in the death of this man from my home city of Detroit.
Detroit in the house.
Right, Detroit in the house. But from my understanding, Chad, it was that they were trying to prevent a roll call. Not that they wanted one; they were trying to prevent one, because certain Jackson detractors would say, well, Jackson and Chad kind of alluded to this, that he would violate the bylaws of the convention, because he didn't want to give up power. And people would say, well, Jackson, he was just power hungry. He couldn't see that his days were numbered, that the culture was shifting.
He took him to court, didn't he?
I'm not sure. I don't know.
Yeah, they did take him to court.
Okay.
They ruled in Jackson's favor.
Yeah. That's right.
Chris Jackson now.
Yeah.
I'm mad at you.
Y'all gonna take me to court?
You know,
King, what, 26, 27 years old?
Right.
Oh my goodness.
There was still, I guess, I mean, I guess you can say that, just fair to say that the majority of the folks were on Jackson's side, but the support for King
was rising.
His ilk, it was rising, it was growing, and Jackson was panicked. Now, some people may say, well, is this because he was worried about himself? Because there's a lot of power came with that position.
Right.
Or was he genuinely concerned about the church and about, other things? Because, Jackson had been an outspoken critic of communism going all the way back to the 1930s. In 1935, he delivered a famous sermon. It's known to history as Communism and the Larger Freedom of the Negro. In that speech, he did showcase and stated outright his support for Gandhi, which he would later.
Chuck, did he ever talk about Black liberation theology at all?
Yes, he did.
I don't know.
He did. Yes.
Okay.
He said that God is like, you have a contingent of people now, and this was in response to the proliferation of people like James Cone, who tried to relegate God to a color, and God is not a color. So yes, he did speak to that.
So then, yeah, so I mentioned that. I mentioned the fight there, and like Chad was talking about the roll call, because the idea was, or some who criticized Jackson said that, well, he didn't want things to go to a vote because he feared that he would lose, and so he had people who were in his corner, in his back pocket, whatever, and they would do these, who's in favor of reelecting Jackson, say aye, and it was aye, and there would be no vote, and then he'd be the president again after having pledged the previous year that he would step down, but he just continued to hold on. I mean, people say, well, he represented the quote unquote conservative voice of the Black church, and he needed to realize that there was this new, the Martin,
the apostate faction.
The apostate faction was rising, but it's weird. And you say, why didn't he call out King? A lot of people don't mention the fact, to the extent that they mention Jackson at all, is that Jackson, he had known the King family for a long time.
I don't give a damn.
I know that's why I said what I'm about to say is probably gonna help y'all's position, because you're gonna be like, that make it even worse.
That makes it worse. It's like he knew how trifling they were.
And he sort of
trifling is crazy.
And he kind of looked at King almost like a son. It's like a mentor to And even when I think the Progressive National Baptist Convention, when it started, I believe that Ebenezer Church remained in the National Baptist Convention.
Yeah, they sure did.
They stayed. They stayed. His father, they said, we're not going anywhere. And so I don't know if
they're PBNC now.
Yeah. So maybe it was because of
PNBC.
Right?
Yeah.
So maybe it was because Ebenezer stayed after the fallout, or maybe it was because of the long-standing relationship he had with the King and his father and the family. I don't know. I don't know.
As it stands now, the Black church is basically apostate.
It's a mess.
They support Black Lives Matter, LGBTQ.
Right.
I mean, Jamal Bryant is basically the Pope of Black Christianity in America, which is a freaking shame.
But it's fair to say.
Yeah, he's out shopping running.
I think the consensus. I mean, we're trying to get Jackson the attention and the credit and the respect that he deserves for the positive things that he did do. But I think we can all agree that
would you agree that Jackson
a lot to be desired. There was an opportunity missed.
No doubt. I have no doubt whatsoever. He's a better man. He had better morals, better scruples, better ideals. He was a better man. The only thing I hold against Jackson is that he didn't come out and tell us.
Okay, I think we can all agree.
And I still think one of the biggest problems we have in Black America right now is the division of labor, that we actually take our Black preachers and we make them the kings of our community. We don't have a politician, a Black preacher, and a civil rights group, and they kind of check and balance each other. Like I was checking, I think that there has never been a Jewish rabbi that has been in Congress. The last Roman Catholic priest was like in the 80s. But yeah, we got Black preachers everywhere.
Indian, Japanese.
Nobody except Black folks.
Right. Except colored people.
And so where's the check and balance, right? Where is the Nathan that goes to David and said, thou art the man? that corrects him? Where's the Billy Graham that goes to the president and says, you can't do that?
Yeah.
You know, they're one and the same. And so the very person who's supposed to be our moral, virtuous religious leader is making backroom deals for LGBTQ.
Because they put
and abortion and birth control and letting drag queens go in schools up in Washington, D.C. And so they corrupt our religion. And this is the problem. And King started all of that. And
he continued it. He didn't start it. He continued it.
He continued it.
Yeah.
And Joseph Jackson, not that he ever ran for office, but he was heavily involved in politics. And I don't know if he's part of NAACP, he probably was.
He wasn't.
So, okay, good. So we took the black church and we made it an arm of politics. And basically of an apostate political party. I mean, it would be bad enough to be part of politics, but if the political movement that you were adjacent to actually mirrored your religious ideology, it'd be much better.
Right. So was Jackson being hypocritical when he said verbatim that a minister of the gospel can't be a politician? Did
he say that?
Yeah, he did.
Oh, if he said that, I agree with him.
He did.
I agree with him because you have to do things in politics that the pastor and the preacher is supposed to be the barometer. When you go too far, he's supposed to be the one to he's a safety valve. You can't do that. Why? God says no. You can't do that based on my religion. I'm going to tell my congregation about this. You're treading now on very, 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 the whole abolitionist movement was basically a movement that started in the church.
Go back to the 19th century again.
Always back.
You can't
y'all
do
love
that.
y'all some slaves.
We try to use these
Trying to free y'all.
Let me hear.
We try to use these moral ideologies to press our political. But now you're using the church to press an anti-Christian ideology in politics. And that's extraordinarily dangerous. And here's the coup de grace. We're dying. It is not hyperbole.
Literally.
The nation is actually dying.
Literally.
So here's what I'll say. In light, to put a bow on this, because of J.H. Jackson's failure to mark and avoid and do what the Apostle Paul admonished the people of God to do when there's a known false teacher in the midst, effectively the black community has been ushered into the hands of the Democratic Party. Since that's where we are. I
wouldn't say because of his failure.
Well, I would
lay it solely at the feet of Jackson.
No, obviously
that's
we're speaking broadly.
He didn't even want us against Jesse Jackson and Sharpton and all the rest of those cats back in those days that I know of, and they were leading us right there. After the Civil Rights Movement, all those cats ran right to the Democratic Party, whether
even while King was alive, like King literally lobbied the 64 convention to accept the Freedom Democrats, who were literally Marxists who were aiming to, in a sense,
adopted the symbol
capture the Democrat Party in perpetuity to advance the communist cause.
Yeah, and it had gotten baked in by the time Ronald Reagan got there.
The point,
because as you know, Abernathy also endorsed Reagan and Hosea Williams did, but it had gotten baked in then that if you weren't getting free stuff from the government, if they weren't giving black people free stuff, you were racist.
The point I was making is that has turned the black community into this voting block of give us free.
Yeah.
Literally free things. So, since that's the case, we know that you two agree on a lot, but you disagree in terms of black political engagement. You think the right is no different than the left, and I'm broadly summarizing your position.
I don't think that would carry the right.
Yeah, okay. I was.
But you said broadly, to be fair.
Broadly, meaning Chad has smoke for the right and the left because he doesn't believe that the right truly
Well, they don't understand their history.
Right. They don't know their history enough to where you take you have issues with them.
Right.
Whereas we know you absolutely hate the left.
Well,
you can't stand Democrats.
You can't take it to an extreme with me with hate.
Right.
Here's the thing, though.
Whatever you about to say is right. I hate it.
Whatever it is, you can't take it to the extreme.
Here's the thing, though, Mrs. Chapman. The fact is, when it comes to modern so-called Republicans,
yes,
what they don't understand is the whole schematic of progressive, dare I say, communist agenda and tactics.
I agree.
Which includes the use of reactionaryism to their advantage, right? In the whole kind of orchestra of pushing their agenda,
right,
the reactionary is just as useful and just as important as the activist for leftist causes. Because to the extent that a reactionary reacts, be it rhetorically or violently, that reaction is then used as a poster child for that which they are, quote unquote, coming against. And
can you give an example?
Nonviolence, right? Bull O'Connor is a racist. He is anti-black. He is anti-freedom. He is anti-civil rights.
And a Democrat.
But the thing is, though, we mustn't get hung up on Republican and Democrat just for a moment. Just for a moment.
He was, but okay.
This is what brought us here.
This is a factual truth.
Yes.
That's a fact, but
it's undeniable.
And he died a Democrat.
Yes. However, if you listen to what the man said,
I was about to say something factual though.
If you listen to what the man said about what's happening within the civil rights apparatus, the man was 100% true.
So flesh it out for us.
Right.
What was Bull O'Connor, the Democrat?
Bull Connor.
He wasn't Irish.
Connor.
Did I say O'Connor?
Yeah, you did.
He may have been Irish. I don't know.
Yeah. What was Bull Connor saying that was correct in your opinion?
He said he was communist, Marxist, outside agitators.
Yeah. Precisely. He
wasn't wrong.
He was saying
he was
that.
Absolutely right.
He was saying that.
And he was using the law enforcement tools of the day.
Right. He was saying that the Negras were.
That's what he said.
This is the word that he used.
That's what he said.
This is the word that he used.
That's how
he said they're being taken advantage of by these so-called leaders who are appealing to the lowest common denominator of our social existence in the South. They're appealing to laziness. They're appealing to the desire for free stuff. That's what they're appealing to.
I don't disagree with anything Bull Connor just said.
I don't disagree with it either.
Right, he's not wrong.
The thing is, and Vince knows this as well as I do, probably even better than I do. When you look at what King was doing in terms of the so-called Children's Crusade,
oh gosh,
they tried this in other cities and failed, but they had success in Birmingham.
Basically,
made a fool out of
basically that was
down in Albany, Georgia.
For the audiences, that's when King would go into the schools and bribe the children to come out and march and offer them ice cream or things.
And then no dogs were waiting.
And then the dogs and the hoses. So the optics of what we saw, like, oh my gosh, look at them putting those dogs and hoses on those poor children. It was all staged.
And you look, hold that thought, Chad, please. And when you look at the footage, and I'm thinking about myself as a young man and had trouble. Oh, I skipped school. You want me to do what?
Yeah.
And if you look at the march, I mean, they're dancing, they're having fun. They're playing in the water, taunting the police. That's something my little narrow 14-year-old behind would have been doing out in the street.
They're doing the Cabbage Patch dance.
Doing the Cabbage Patch in the street. They're having a good time.
Yes.
I did a podcast on this, and I had comments. People who were in that march telling me that I was correct, that they were paid, that they lied to them, that they had paid organizers lying to them, bringing them out, telling them they were ice cream. It was going to be like a little nice march, and they didn't know that the water hoses were waiting on them.
James Bevel himself.
James Bevel himself. Yeah, went to prison for raping his daughters.
There you go.
Yes, he did.
James Bevel himself.
Not that tall.
I didn't know he was that short, but
running women all the time. Keeping away women.
He was about the height of Prince. But James Bevel, James Bevel, who King put in, who King put in charge to run point on the whole Children's Crusade nonsense.
Well, maybe he knew he liked kids.
He said, "Yes."
Well, being around King unless you was a pervert.
This man literally.
That's the first question on the application.
Are you a pervert?
If you say no, he said, "Well, we'll see you later." If you said yes,
first question on the
you go back to the next guy. Jesse Jackson, all of them, they were pervert suckers.
But this man
time to town doing the freakish stuff.
James Bevel literally said out of his own mouth hole that we went after children as young as 6.
Wow. Oh boy.
Now I have a 5-year-old, 5-year-old daughter who's about to turn 6. I can't imagine.
I'd go crazy.
I can't imagine her being part of some kind of nonsensical children's crusade.
Right.
But Bevel said we went after children because they were susceptible.
Yeah.
Dang, that's why they always come for the kids.
See? Chad, we're gonna have to do a movie on this.
Said it openly. Said it openly with no shame. I don't know if he ever repented for what he did.
He went to prison for what he did. His son came out and was like
100%. 100%.
All the civil rights individuals knew of James Bevel's pedophilia.
Right.
And he vowed not to talk about their homosexuality if they didn't talk about his pedophilia.
They all had
Right.
There was a circle of firing squad.
Oh yeah, they
all
were super gay.
Yeah.
But the thing is,
They gay now.
He said about Jesse Jackson's homosexuality. That's what his son said.
but when you look at the fact that,
That's what he said.
but when you look at the fact that, and like, so the thing is, people like to champion King as he was the one who came up with this bright idea of nonviolence. He came up with this idea of direct action, where you go into these communities, you go into these places in the South, and you do a demonstration, a peaceful demonstration. You make sure that you're dressed just like we are dressed here right now. And you just show up, you want to vote. And the white man is going to show his racism by getting his dogs, by getting his hoses, by getting his batons to chase us out because they don't want us to vote. That's completely a made up press narrative to, in a sense, sway public opinion.
Tell us the correct narrative.
The reality is, even though these people were able to pull permits in these places, they chose not to pull permits.
Illegal marches.
They had illegal marches. And this goes back to the 1920s because these Communist Front labor unions were doing the exact same thing.
Wasn't even original.
Where they weren't pulling permits.
Original.
They were going, even though they were able to, they weren't pulling permits because they understand that even though we are a nation that has a First Amendment right to free speech, we are also a nation of law and order.
Right.
We have to account.
The amendment gives the states the right to regulate.
We have to account for noise. We have to account for traffic. We have to account for all the things.
So you need to pull a permit.
So you're not inconveniencing people who are just trying to go about their day.
And that's what Edmund Pettus Bridge was all about. They were illegally marching.
Exactly.
Ooh, let's talk about that for a little bit.
And so King, it didn't originate with King. Again, this is documented. Anybody can literally go right now to archives.org, On 5, British Path, any of the archive websites that are out there, and they can see the footage for themselves of all white, and in some cases predominantly white labor unions in the 1920s and 30s, 40s, 50s, and 60s,
Right, it's labor union tactic.
not pulling their permits, doing their demonstrations, inviting violence against themselves because they understand that to the extent that by the time the dogs and the hoses come out and the cameras start rolling,
that's the reaction.
The public will perceive it as, or interpret as, oh man, they're going after these people just because they're trying to get their labor union rights.
I mean,
Right.
Oh, they're going after these people just because they're trying to get their voting rights. No, they're
Kind of
going
like
after
what
them
happened in
because
Minnesota.
they
I was
hold their
going to
permits
say,
and they're illegally
march, sit here and breathe.
And so the reality of it is this.
They're doing the same thing now.
We're not talking about 2026. We're talking about 1926, where the jails were not as robust as they are today. Right? You had what's called a jail house, right? A jail house can only hold
Not a
but
jail
so many.
facility.
Right. So
Can't arrest them, but we got to get them out of here.
the first course of action is to arrest them. But if there's so many of them that you can't arrest them all,
You gotta disperse
you have
the
to
crowd.
disperse them.
Yeah.
And there's methods to disperse them in the way of German shepherds, in the way of fire hoses, and the way of batons. You have to use force, right?
And they learned this at Highlander Folk School.
They had
Right, Montego,
precisely.
Tennessee.
They were taught
And so,
these tactics. They knew them.
and so the objective first and foremost was to fill the jail. King said himself, we knew that we can fill the jails.
Right.
They went into Albany, but
It didn't work there.
The police chief of Albany knew what they were up to. He's seen this movie before. So what he did is he corresponded with the other local communities and said, look, King is about to come into town. Make room in your jails.
Yep.
And so whenever they came into town, they had plenty of room
For everybody.
and they filled up the jails. And then to the extent that this jail filled up, then it's on to the next town and this on to the next town. They worked in correspondence with each other. It proved to be an abysmal failure.
Yeah.
By the time they got to Birmingham, however, either Bull Connor didn't get the memo
He didn't.
or he was
wanted to
just
just-
completely like, oh, I don't care about that. I'm going to handle it my own way.
Right.
They found Bull Connor. They recruit.
They
looked
specifically-
They
around
looked for
Yeah.
cities of vulnerabilities.
because
Yeah.
they wanted the optics.
And by the way,
got them.
Bull Connor's election, like it was up. He was voted out, right? And they were awaiting his successor. So he wasn't even rightfully elected by the time they did this.
Right. Oh,
And so they did the march. James Bevel went into town the school administrators allowed him to have access to the students, and he would basically, and he said this himself. They specifically went after the cheerleaders and the football players and the basketball players because they knew that they had popularity and sway among the other students.
Right. Lord have mercy.
And so he basically embittered them. James Bevel literally said that you see the fact that your helmet is a different color than your jersey. That's because the white community don't care about you. They give you the hand-me-downs. They give you the leftovers. Never mind the fact that when it came to because even Obama likes to say, oh, they gave us the hand-me-down books and the hand-me-down this and the hand-me-down that.
Were you learning?
No. Right. The fact of the matter is that school administrators, Negro school administrators, in some cases, misappropriated the funds.
Oh, like they do now.
Instead of buying the books, they bought red bottoms, right?
Hey, I got books.
Instead of buying the books, they bought things they don't need.
Right.
And in other cases, they were just being thrifty with the funds.
Right.
Instead of using the money to buy things like textbooks and so on.
Kind of like a lot of the HBCUs misappropriate the funds. You don't know where the money is.
In this case,
Minneapolis.
In this case, they were just being thrifty where it's like, look, we can spend this money on the books, or we could just take over the leftover books from these schools and we can stretch the money to go further. So they were just being thrifty with the funds.
Right.
But that didn't make any difference to James Bevel. He would say that it's because of white supremacy, because they don't care about it. The objective was to instill bitterness
and covetous,
to make them angry, to make them want to actually show up and protest and things of this nature. Yeah. So he told them, look, we're going to demonstrate, we're going to have a meeting at the 16th Street Baptist Church. We want y'all to show up to that meeting. And the school administrators were on board, the teachers were on board. Never mind the fact that if what they desired to have come into fruition did come to fruition, they would be without a job. In an integrated society.
They didn't think that far.
These Negro teachers are no longer needed.
Yeah.
Right?
And that happened.
They didn't care about that. They weren't focusing on the long term. They were focusing on the now. And so they gave these hoodlums and these thugs access to their children, their students, against their parents' will, by the way.
Right.
Because their parents didn't want them marching.
Right.
So he gave them access. Bevel came in, he showed them footage from a previous sit-in that they had in Nashville, Tennessee. He showed them that propaganda footage to get them riled up, to get them agitated. He made them believe that you too can be like these heroes. And so, and he said, so we're going to
today, don't they?
Exactly. So they did something. They had something called D-Day. The D-Day was the first phase where you would skip school, you would show up, and you would march. And there will be so many of you that Bull Connor would have to start hauling you off to jail. But those jails are going to fill up by day 1. By day 2, we have what's called double D-Day.
The more people
now the jails are too full. So Connor would have no other recourse but to say, call in the dogs. And they called in the dogs. They called in the hoses. As Vince says in the film, King brought the cameras and the media personnel from up north. They started rolling the cameras. You see dogs, you see hoses, you see batons, you see kids running.
And then you have America.
They don't show the footage of the kids dancing, doing the Cabbage Patch. We wouldn't see that till later.
Wow.
They selectively chose the footage, broadcasted it around the world. Bayard Rustin said himself that, they were doing that stuff in the 20s and 30s with predominantly white labor unions, but this time we had television.
Yeah, we had television.
This time everybody had a television in their home. We were off to the races now. So they used children to further their cause, and the rest is history.
I mean, to your point, Chad, there was a famous shooting in 1929 where you had these I think they were World War I veterans were, protesting. They were trying to, redress their
the bonus march.
We talked about that earlier. And this was pretty much the death knell for Hoover at the time, and that's what brought in FDR. I mean, it was after the embarrassment of that scandal, there was no way. But I just wanted to just talk about this whole nonviolence thing. It's interesting, and people want to create this separation or this difference between, King and his group showed us how to utilize our rights in the correct way so as to create a better society, because they want you to believe that there was so much injustice and all these things going on. But like Chad mentioned, King knew what the response would be when you engage in, of course, we're all familiar with the term civil disobedience. This is another term that they would use. And as they got closer and closer toward the end of the 1960s, they were even talking about ratcheting it up even more so, talking about doing a lot of the things that you see now with blocking freeways, sitting down in the middle of streets and not allowing cars to move about. So that's the stuff that they were talking about. But what I find striking is that, you get the violent response, and King is funny because he was before, at the time, By the Gaslight was just a novel written, I think, by some British author. Everybody uses the term gaslighting nowadays, but King was a gaslighter par excellence.
Yeah,
I don't know.
That's what the civil rights movement was. It was a massive gaslighting campaign.
I don't know if there was anyone better. And he would go on. He would say things like, in response to the violence that was carried out against himself and the marches that he led, he would say that, of course, they're going to react with violence to our nonviolence, because that's what happens when you exist within the context of injustice. I'm not quoting him exactly, but that's sort of like a paraphrase. Yeah. You're going to have a violent reaction to nonviolence when there is injustice. Okay. And so remember, Vince, you were going on earlier about, people need to stand up for themselves, hit me. And so you got people looking at this, they're watching this and they're saying to myself, you marching and they're believing the lie. They're believing the propaganda that
they put the narrative out there.
And so why do you think that we began to see the rise and all this militancy with Schnick took a different route and Ram and then later on with the Black Panthers and all these other groups. And then
King said the riot is the voice of the unheard.
Right. He would say things like that. He would make apologies for it and say, well, I don't believe in doing that. But there was always that caveat that but
talking out of both sides of his mouth.
Talking out both sides of his mouth. And then he said specifically when it came to the Poor People's Campaign, he said that this is the middle ground. See, this is the synthesis. This is how we're going to get, this revolution through democratic action, because they're going to look at the riots, which King would say, well, that doesn't work. We don't want that. But we're sick and tired of, I think the quote was something about supplications was the word he used, pretty much asking the government and having them, I guess, not do whatever King felt as though the federal government should be doing. But this is how we're going to get them to listen.
But do you know how much money that Negro
or you're going to deal with the marchers. You're going to deal with the rioters. I'm sorry, not marchers. Coercion. And then after the passage of the 1965 Voting Rights Act, we saw the big riot in Watts in 65. We saw the huge riot in Detroit in 1967. People still talk about it in my city.
Up in Harlem.
We saw Harlem. We saw Newark burn. We saw South Bend, Indiana burn. And then what happened in 1967? I forgot the long, it's a long, but it's commonly referred to as the Kerner Report or the Kerner Commission.
The Kerner Commission, yes.
They came in and they had all of these intelligence muckety-mucks come in, and the people who had been arrested, they brought them in, and they had folks in plain clothes who had interviewed them and asked them, because they're thinking, this is American, the intelligence apparatus. They're thinking at the time, okay, here's this new crop of folks coming in. They thought that the popularity of Stokely Carmichael was on the rise and all these individuals in 1967. And to their shock, they thought that, and of course, Malcolm X was dead by then, but they thought as a symbol, he would be their quote unquote favorite or preferred black leader.
Right.
The majority of those surveyed who had been arrested during those riots in those various cities, the majority of them, particularly in Detroit, they said that their favorite black leader was MLK. They, out of their own mouths, said that it was King who radicalized them, no one else.
The nonviolent person.
Not the nonviolent person is the one who made them violent, because it's only, you can call it human nature, call it what you like. When you see somebody and you're buying into the propaganda that here is this person who's just trying to peacefully march and they're just getting beat on, you're going to say, it ain't going to be me.
Right.
Now you're going to take them back or take them on violence. As a matter of fact, you're going to preempt them if need be. Never mind self-defense. I'll just go out and be overtly more aggressive because I don't like what you did to Brother Martin,
right?
And so on. And
by the way,
King knew
this domino kind of progression of the phases of the so-called civil rights movement was well known to the intelligence apparatus of the Soviet Union. So to the point that you're making, Chuck, the nonviolent phase gives way to the violent phase. Even
also, Chad, you know that they had professional agitators that came with them. That helped start the violence.
Well, we'll see, and that's
doing
what,
it now.
That's the same thing.
But then that's what the apologists. That's what they always say. You know that, and I'm sure I'm sure that there was some of that. I mean, what do you expect the federal government? What do you expect the government to do when you have openly, in my opinion? I mean, you may not say it, directly. This is like the heyday of the Red Scare back in the 20s and 30s, but. If you are king, to me, I mean, you are an enemy to this nation, and not just an enemy to the state or to the power that be. I'm talking about the ordinary citizen. Right. You have openly declared war on this country. Right. What do you expect the reaction to be?
In his book, Parting the Waters, is what they said. They said they went to King and told him that he had all of these communists in his organization. He needed to get rid of them. King wouldn't do it. And they said they kept warning him and kept telling him. And then finally they said that he cannot be talked to. He will not listen. And that they labeled King an enemy of the state. And they said that with this designation, it is so very rare. They said that even if they heard that somebody was coming to assassinate him, they would not tell him. And this was something that they would do for mafia dons.
Right.
They were obligated to say, we've heard that you're going to get killed. You need to look out, They said that when you are designated an enemy of the state, if they hear that you're going to get killed, they don't have to warn you. Right. And that's how dangerous King had gotten. And to your point, Chuck, that's the stuff he was doing. He would go to cities, he would agitate. They would bring in people with them who were undercover, and they would set the whole freaking city on fire. So even when you talked about Newark and Detroit and Watts and Chicago.
Even what happened in Memphis shortly before he was assassinated.
These people actually were not burning up their own communities. There were people coming with King who were basically communist agitators sent from Moscow. When King got shot, all that stuff went up in flames all over the country, and it was all designed.
And the reason why he didn't listen is because his most trusted advisor was Stanley Levison.
Sure, he knew where his money was coming from.
Right.
Where his bread was buttered.
He never rejected anything.
Never.
Any counsel that came from Stanley Levison. And to the extent that he would get counsel about, like, hey, you might want to slow this down, or hey, you might want to do this, he would always filter it through Stanley Levison and ask, well, what do you think about this? And then he would basically follow through with whatever.
He would make a move with
that. Was a true handler.
He was.
So it sounds as if we've had discussions on the status of the Civil War, kind of, sort of.
No, we did.
History.
We covered the breadth of it. What are your final thoughts as we wrap? I have no idea how long we've been talking. I'm glued to this seat. I can't even move it.
We should make this a regular thing.
What I'm talking about, what we have to do now, there are things that need to be done now.
Oh man,
to try to turn this thing around, because again, we're dying. This is not hyperbole. We should be at 2.1 birth rate to just sustain where we are. We're at 1.6. We've been there for 10 years. They're saying that America's dying as a nation. And the black community, I don't have to tell you guys, Chuck, you're in Detroit. Hell, you see it more than anybody. It's in a state of just complete.
You trying to say you live in the hood?
I don't live in the hood anymore.
Detroit's Detroit, man. Detroit's Detroit. Hell, I'm from Memphis, so I can't talk.
I'm from the Bronx.
And so we know, right?
Oh, no, we talk.
So the question is, what do we do? And this is why I'm such an advocate for school choice.
Right.
You homeschool your children. Chad homeschools his. I send mine to private school. And our children are turning out fine because we're not allowing these people to get into their heads and screw their heads up.
Right.
It's very important that we be able, if we're going to rebuild this next generation, take them away from these people that really want to indoctrinate them. And Chad and Chuck, y'all know this. The system that we have in the United States of America is a system devised by the communists. You should not have the state educating its own population. That is crazy. The communists did it. The Russians did it. Send your child to a state school, let the government educate them on whether they're going to be robots for the state. Yeah. And for the first 150 years of this nation, the church did it. Then all of a sudden, of course, what did this old Democrat tell me when I said, man, how do you get black people to vote for y'all? He said, man, I'll tell you, Vince, if you promise not to hit me. I said, man, all right. I promise not to hit you.
I love this.
How do you white Democrats get black folks to vote for you. He said, all right, son, you can get a nigger to drink poison if you give it to him for free.
I'd have laughed.
He did laugh.
And what are they? Free.
I said, give us free.
Give us free. Yeah.
And we take it and it destroys us. Free education, right? Oh, hell yeah. You take these little children.
Free child care.
And see, and you know, it's a burden to homeschool your children.
It is.
It's a burden, man. You can put them on the school bus, right?
Yeah.
And just send them. But you do it because you love them. And it becomes something that is therapeutic for you.
Yeah.
And you love them.
Now, you must ain't never homeschool some kids. So I want to say therapeutic.
It's crazy.
Sanctifying, yes.
It's crazy to me that one of the 10 points, because there were 10 points.
Marx and Engels plan? Or the Black Panther? Is that Marx and Engels 10-point plan? Or are you talking about the Black Panther?
The Black Panther 10-point plan.
Okay, yeah.
We want education for our children. It's like,
why you gotta say it like Bobby Seale?
They want the government to do it. They white man that ain't wanted to do it. Right?
That's how they talk.
We have to get back. And I think that's one of the things, Chad, that I really like about the Republican Party. I know you don't think that, though, the Republicans are, got a halo.
When I get in this, that's why. That's
just one of the things that I do like. They do support school choice. And every red state right now has a very robust school choice plan. It's pulling your children out. Mississippi has a miracle going on down there. The state of Louisiana is the same thing because they've allowed school choice, they've allowed charters, they've allowed scholarships, and it's changing. And mostly young black people are benefiting from this. That's one of the things I like about them. Number two, the party is also pro-life. The Democratic Party will give you free money to abort your children up to the 9th month. We have to stop this. Justice Brandeis said, for good or for ill, people follow the example of government. When you make something legal, as they did with Roe v. Wade, abortions were very rare in America until Roe v. Wade. And then they exploded. Why? Because government said it was good. And now we are doing millions a year. And so government said it was good, bam, it was good. They press this ideology that is so punitively egregious toward the nuclear family.
Yeah.
Buying a home, having a wife and children, building. Now, if you want to be LGBTQ, you want to get domestic partnership legislation, yeah, they'll give you that. But if you want to say, no, there's value and virtue in marriage.
Yes.
And you don't get these benefits unless you do it. And that's a marriage between a man and a woman. Why? Because if this works, many of the problems got in society just go away. Yeah. We don't need welfare. We don't need prisons. We don't need a bunch of police. We don't need drug rehab centers. It goes away. We need to find a way to make sure that young people can get married, have families, and have children again. And a lot of that comes from not so much as the government giving you an incentive to do it, but taking away the incentive to not do it, which is what they're doing now. They give so much money for you to do a bad thing. They enable you to do it. So this is one of the reasons, too. The Democratic Party will give you money to kick your daddy out, will give you WIC, will give you a free house, as long as you don't have a man around. Mm-hmm. They'll make sure that mother, I don't care if she can't take care of these children, if she's on crack, they'll take the sons away from a father who will educate them and raise them properly and give them to her. Okay. And have these boys grow up crazy. And then the last thing that they do, they have this tendency to press the most egregious, nastiest, dirtiest, anti-Christian behavior. They celebrate hip-hop culture. Bring them to the White House.
Ghetto culture.
Ghetto culture. Thank you.
And why'd you make the distinction between ghetto and hip-hop?
Well, we know how hip-hop started. It was cool, right? But now it's kind of,
There's some hip-hop that I like and I appreciate.
I agree.
But ghetto culture, this idea that you get out of the kind of Frankfurt School, the ghetto people, where you're politicizing this idea of there's nothing wrong with the culture. There's something wrong with the system. These people are perfectly fine. And in fact, they need to be accommodated. They need to be, there needs to be legislation centered around supporting them and in a sense, enabling them and being beneficiary to their lifestyle. So it's this idea of it's not incumbent upon the people to fix themselves and to fix their cultures. Rather, it's incumbent upon the system to, in a sense, finance and fund them. So that to me is the distinction. Whereas hip hop is like it's an interesting thing because to Vince's point, or at least the point that I think he's making, is that when you look at the proliferation of hip hop in the late 80s, early 90s, and the politicization thereof, whether you're talking about Public Enemy, whether you're talking about NWA, which was in a sense enshrining the kind of Angela Davis, kind of Huey Newton, kind of fight the power rhetoric, and making it kind of cultural folklore.
You talked about the Fight the Power video. I just see images of, in the video shoot, they're holding up images of Paul Robeson and Langston Hughes, members of the Communist Party, in the video.
So you're artistically enshrining and making it kind of our cultural fabric through music, through the arts, the kind of rhetoric of this activist contingent. So it moves from being just an activist thing to now part of our cultural dynamic.
That's the problem.
And so it's semantics and nuance. Yeah. But my final remarks are this, and it kind of piggybacks off of something that Vince was saying here, whereas you don't want to, like, you want to de-incentivize a lot of the what is currently on the books and what's currently on law, what's currently on record in terms of enabling the deficiencies and the disparities that we see in the colored community.
Sorry. One day I'm gonna be able to take that term.
I don't understand how you so like the way it just rolled off your tongue. Like you're used to it now. Like it just comes out. Like it's not.
I'm gonna start using it. I'm gonna start using it.
It just flowed out, bro.
I'm gonna start using it.
This is gonna be quick. We talk about voting, and I don't want to tell nobody not to vote, but I'm saying that we put too much emphasis on it.
Right.
If you get money, you can have two rich dudes in the city that are millionaires that can control the whole city council, control the mayor's office, the governor's office, because they got money. Like Booker T. Washington said, get money. And it doesn't matter if you vote, because if they don't allow you to vote, if you get yourself a PAC, you control the sheriff's department. You control the city council. They're going to have to come to you because they know you got $10 million there and a kitty. And they're going to come and say, Mr. Ellison, this is what we'll do for you. Will you now?
Right.
And so that's why they go to Elon Musk now, because they have money.
Right.
Elon Musk has one vote.
Right.
One vote.
He will equal when it comes to vote, but when it comes down to how many votes he can control,
Yeah.
No.
Yeah. 100%.
So this is where we mess up. The Black community is the only community in America that accept money during election years. Other communities give money.
Yes.
They buy politicians. We accept money. Our preachers definitely. NAACP.
They can be bought.
Yeah, they can be bought.
Yeah.
And then we're bought. But if we ever get to a point where we understand, I don't even know if there is a black PAC. If it is, it's probably got $25 in it. You know.
There's a black church PAC.
Yeah, about $15 in it.
No, they left us.
Vince, I've heard you tell you. I mean, I'm not asking you to go into it, but you've been in politics, right? You ran.
He ran against Jim Clyburn.
2000. So I know about this very, very well. And the money is there, and they control the politicians with it. We have to get to a point where we do understand this, and I know, we've said we. But the vote is going to be one thing. That's fine. I'm not telling you not to vote, but it will not save you.
Come on.
It's going to be your own personal virtue.
Yeah.
Your own willingness to take risk, like you did with the MLK Project. Take risk. The people you have around you, your knowledge, your skill set, and go out there and apply it in the marketplace.
Right.
And if you do that, you will be successful in uncommon hours, and then you walk confidently in the direction of your dreams.
Well, those are the sentiments that are echoed in my final remarks here. Which again,
your final?
Yeah, my final remarks. To be fair, I yielded some of my time.
I think I interrupted.
Oh, no. You did.
So the fact is, again, we have to start first and foremost as people who are created in God's image.
Amen.
That the answers to our problems, in terms of our practical problems, start in the mirror.
Amen.
Come on.
And so the fact that that today we start with as a kind of intuitive default that the government is the answer to what ails us as a community, what ails my family, what ails me personally. I mean, there's a lot of colored men walking around right now who say that, systemic racism and the white man and the oppressor, this is kind of their operating kind of function.
It's so sad.
It never dawns on them like, no, you have a mind, you have limbs,
That's right.
you have wherewithal to make something of yourself. And not only that, you live in America.
Yes.
But they can't do that if they have to have a villain.
Right.
And so white supremacy and white privilege has to be the villain.
Right.
Because if they don't have that villain, then they're forced to do something about their own station in life. Yeah.
100%. And so, you know, my dear friend Chuck here on the way here was telling me about a friend of his who was operating under that idea or under that notion that it was just a matter of fact that the white man keeps me down.
Oh, wow.
That the system is systemically racist and therefore we can't get ahead. And look, every time we try to get ahead, and of course,
they burn up our city.
And of course, this is, you know, Chuck's friend didn't say this, but what you hear colored people saying is that, well, you know, every time we try to build something, here along comes a white man to burn it all down. This is the sentiment. This is the oral history that colored people buy into again and again and again and again. And so my objective is to say, like, no, like you are made in the image of God. You have the wherewithal, you have the limbs, you have the mind.
Right.
Go and do it.
Go do something with yourself.
I can say that because people might say, well, you're being insensitive or you don't have any kind of sympathy. It's like, no, I used to be homeless.
Who?
Right? Me. Chad Jackson used to be homeless. I lived out of my car for about 6 months. Wow, right. But the fact is, I utilized what was at my disposal to make something of myself. Right. So I'm speaking of someone who has been at the lowest of lows.
Right.
I'm not speaking abstractly or theoretically. I'm speaking as somebody who's been through it. I'm speaking as a redeemed son of God who repented. You should tell that story more, Chad. Right. Who repented and came to the fact that I am a sinner. Yes. And it is only Christ who saves, that it is only his name that is given under heaven by which men can be saved. Yeah. It's not a politician who's going to save me. It's not an activist who's going to save me. It's Christ alone. And once Christ saves you, it is now incumbent upon you to live a life that is constantly being sanctified.
Right.
Right. And when you are being sanctified, the Bible says in James, draw near to God and God will draw near to you.
There it is.
And so there are things that are in keeping with walking in lockstep with what saith the Lord.
Right.
If a man won't work, he shall not eat. A man who doesn't take care of his family is worse than an infidel. There's practical components to walking a life that's sold out to Christ.
Amen.
And that doesn't start with politics. It just doesn't.
Or government.
It doesn't start with government.
I don't have a problem calling this young man my son.
Look at you sitting like a proud father.
So that
leads everything correct.
So that leads to the latter point of my closing remarks. When it comes to Republican politics, I know enough about history to know that there's ebbs and flows to this thing.
Pendulum might swing.
That there's nuances to this thing.
Correct.
Right? And even though what Vince says is true about the modern kind of situational setup of the Republican Party versus the Democratic Party, the Democrat Party, yes, is advocating for loose sex and castrating children and the whole nine, just completely demonic. Just completely demonic, utterly demonic.
Right.
On the flip side of that, while I do caucus with Republicans, what I am well aware of, and I know Vince is also well aware of this, is that when it comes to campaigning, Republican politicians are going to tell you what you want to hear, knowing full well they don't agree with that.
I agree.
They are going to appeal to the base.
Yes,
they're going to tell you what you want to hear, but then once they get in Congress, they are more beholden to their donors
and the special interest,
and to the bureaucracies and to the special interest groups than they are to those who worked and spent time away from their family to come up with their party platform. They don't give a damn about the party platform.
Wow.
They don't care about it. They care about power.
That is true. And
you see, like, anytime you see the word bipartisan, the press saying, oh, this was a bipartisan bill.
Lies.
Basically what that means is what this is it's a manipulative word meant to give the perception of everybody just agrees with this.
Unity.
When in reality, like, no, it's a quest for the expansion of federal authority at the expense of individual liberty, at the expense of states' rights, at the expense of what America was meant to be from its inception. And so when I say I'm a conservative, I don't mean it in the way that your contemporary Republican says it.
Right.
When I say I'm a conservative, what I mean by that is that I want to conserve Western civilization itself.
Yes.
And the Christian ethic which undergirds it. Right. That's what I want to preserve it. I don't believe in big tent politics. Right. I don't believe in a big tent Republican Party where you have the transvestites and you have the gays and you have everybody else. Well, you know, yeah, exactly. I don't believe in that.
Yeah, neither do I.
I don't believe in that at all.
Right.
I do believe in a God of common grace that allows a rain to fall on the just as well as the unjust, and the sun to rise on the wicked as well as the righteous. I do believe in that. And I believe that our laws should be shaped and fashioned after that basic concept of common grace that protects life. That means that in my view, we should have on the books federal law and local law anti-abortion bills. I do believe that. Right. I do believe that we should have a law that respects individuals' right to freedom of association. That means repealing the Civil Rights Act of 1964.
Right.
I don't believe that everybody should have the right to vote. I believe that only land-owning men should have the so-called right to vote. And I believe that to the extent that we do have land-owning men, that they should have to pass a litmus test to prove that they understand how government functions in order to vote. So I understand my views are completely radical, right? I understand that.
They're traditional. I think women being able to participate in the election process is what has brought us to the point that we are now, where you get a whole woman just being shot by ICE because they're radicalized, and it's just bad. Well, no, but I'm in the minority though.
Yeah.
I'm in the minority because I'm a married woman with kids, and it's just different. Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, even with that, I mean, there's nuances because, I mean, if a woman is a widow and she inherits like
property,
I do believe that, like, yeah, in certain circumstances, women should have the so-called right to vote. But again, I understand that that's all pie, that to an extent is pie in the sky. But at the end of the day, like, the Bible says, we are strangers, sojourners and aliens in this land. What that does not mean is that we should be passive and we should retreat to the woods. Right. We still have a say for the sake of structure, stability, and peace in the land.
We do.
And in America, in our constitutional republic, we had better use our civic responsibility for the sake of structure, peace, and stability in the land. Right. But we shouldn't never get it twisted that this is heaven. Right. No. America is better than the rest, but it's certainly not heaven. Amen. Right. And so for me, it's like politics is useful to a degree. But what I'm trying to get people to get off of, especially through Historia Revelata, is this notion that first of all, I want to recontextualize history and teach people real history. But also what I want people to understand is basically what Benjamin Franklin said is that you have a republic if you can keep it. And part of keeping a republic is understanding history. If you don't understand history, you are susceptible to demagoguery. You're susceptible to lies and propaganda. You're susceptible to activism and movements. Not understanding that a lot of these movements are controlled by foreign assets, by the CIA and other organizations who are using destabilization, which will give way to normalization, to push us more and more toward globalism. If you understand, as Vince said, either in this discussion or maybe in a previous discussion we had, if you understand that we are to be the parents in this whole dynamic of what America is, and the government is supposed to be the children, you set the tone, you set the temperature. And to the extent that you let your children run amok, the house implodes. But to the extent that your children understand the rules and their place, your society is long for this world. And America is not long for this world insofar that we let our children run amok.
There you go.
Well, it's definitely run amok. You have closing remarks?
Wow. I'm smart enough to know that, I don't want to ruin But
his mic drop.
Said it, and come off, very anticlimactic. I don't know if I could have said any better. And Vince's closing statements were excellent. And too, I came all the way down here because Chad and I are Chad has doing some more filming for the MLK Project for season 2, and I got to go back to another studio and continue to do even more talking.
You do?
Yeah.
Where?
I got some more interviews
today.
More material to record. So
after dinner.
Yeah, we already did like another 2 hour. We did how long were we going earlier today?
About 2.5 hours.
About 2.5 hours. And Chad still has some more questions he wants to ask me. So I try to make this as brief as possible. But like I said, I agree with what those two gentlemen just said. I can't say it much better than that. And I think Alexis de Tocqueville, when he talked about democracy in America, and even I think I brought up Alexander Hamilton in Federalist 17 earlier, and in the importance of not just the importance of the state, but I mean it goes from the bottom up, right? Mm-hmm. And it begins with community, and therefore it begins with family,
right?
And culture, and to the extent that we owe, right? We have an obligation to those that come after us, and that's why we are instructed to, or we should be instructed to, regulate our appetite so as not to ruin the future for those that come after us, and appreciate the past, to appreciate everything. Everyone's kind of caught in this, me, this kind of now thing, and it's like, big brother, big daddy, government, do whatever it is that you can to protect me from the people who are telling me that I can't do the thing that I want to do. It's like, no, it's not about what you want to do or even what you feel as though you have the right to do, as the saying goes. It's about what you ought to do, right? For the common good. And in order to understand that, you must cultivate a virtue. Mm-hmm. And I think that the Judeo-Christian ethic is what really helped to crystallize that through the revelation that was brought forth by the life of Jesus Christ. And that's all I got, man. It's a lot of problems and a lot of things we can talk about, but
I think we solved all the world's problems.
We solved it all.
We all have to just give a round of applause for Miss April Chapman. Yeah. Miss April, you came in, you corralled all of us crazy men.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
You dominatrix.
Listen, I think we are the coloreds in the room that I think you guys leave an amazing legacy for your generation. I'm appreciative to the work and how you pour into all of us individually in your own way. And I appreciate you, Chad, for being such a prolific documentarian, for solidifying and crystallizing these ideas that have long been hidden in history, and you have started an amazing movement, and I'm just glad to be a part of it. So,
well, look, I call you guys my children.
I know, right?
I've been doing this for a long time. When I see that I'm an old guy, you guys can take it
on the head.
Take it on.
It's all good.
I said, these are all my children, man. Good. I'm just happy that you guys are here.
It's all good.
I rest easy at night knowing that you guys have taken up the reins, and you're going to take it 10 times further than I ever have. And I'm happy to be in the midst of you. All you guys, you were just marvelous. I know we can sit here and talk all night. We'll do it again because there's so much to cover. But all the points were great. All the points were good. And people are going to be blessed. Everybody hears it. They're going to be blessed.
Amen. Yeah, Vince is right. He's always telling me, he's like, he always feels like he's about to die tomorrow. He's like, I got to leave this with y'all. Y'all got to run the race, finish strong. I'm like, are you dying tomorrow? So no.
It's time.
I know.
You never know.
But that's a wrap. That's a wrap, you guys. Until next time, grace and peace.
Yes, sir.
All right. Okay, take a picture real quick before we break up, man.